Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion. Why so serious?
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to our 12th annual InSession Film Awards show. This is episode 619 for January 9th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us, everybody. I am very, very excited. It is our award show as we celebrate the films of 2024.
We have to lock it in. No changes. No changes. We're locking it in.
We're ready to go. Absolutely.
Yeah. Everything's absolute in the film critic world.
Exactly. Especially as we get to these awards. This is the definition of film awards. It doesn't get any better than the InSession Film Awards. I'm very excited to get into this. And if you're watching on the video, you'll notice that there is a pretty significant change this year. I do want to send my gratitude and love to the great Ryan McQuaid and Jay Ledbetter, who had joined us on this adventure the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
However, we decided to bring on new blood and give a new voice to the award show. And this year, joining us is the lovely, the great, the Nosferatu himself, Dave Giannini. Dave, thanks for being here, my friend.
Oh, well, thank you. That is the greatest introduction I could ever hope for. You said great and lovely, and I was like, I don't know about that. But then you really closed it out. So.
I was ready to jump in and say, wait, we're talking about Dave, aren't we? I feel like we're talking about something else.
I at least stuck the landing.
Look, brother, I feel the same way about me that you do. So it's totally fine.
I can appreciate that you own up to it.
Yeah, no, but super happy to be here. Trying desperately to fill the shoes of the great Ryan and Jay, and it's not going to be that hard. But we're going to be great. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
At least there'll only be 3 people instead of 4. All I did in preparation is I looked at the timestamp of last year's, and I was like, we gotta get it under Brutalist time.
We're gonna
It
try.
can't be as long as the Brutalist.
We're gonna try.
Yeah.
You were longer last year, 3 and 33. You were longer than the Brutalist.
By just a few minutes,
Yeah. These shows could be a little bit long, as any awards show tends to be, but
that's a good point.
We need an intermission.
it's a great time. I do love getting into these awards. Certainly a little stressful in getting here, but it is some of the most fun that we have all year. This is going to be part 1, episode 619, part 1. Part 2 will be our top 10 movies of 2024. So you can be on the lookout for that soon.
Yep.
Before we get into it, I do want to reiterate up front, in case this is your first InSession Film Awards experience. For every category that we get into, we will each have our own 5 nominees and a selected winner. We do this individually. So Brendan's nominations will be different from Dave's, whose will be different from mine. And of course, the winners will all be very dissimilar as well. So that is what you can expect. And perhaps that elongates the length of the show a little bit, but it's what
we're passionate.
Us from everybody else as well.
We have our opinions, and we have to share those opinions. And it's not just the amount of opinions we're going to have on this episode. It's also the amount of categories that we're going to be covering. It's no small feat. We're first going to be starting off with our individual special awards, which we wanted to give away as our own, that won't be featured in any other category, very unique to ourselves individually. But as far as the official categories we'll be covering, some of these will be familiar for those that very much follow the award circuit in a general sense or even in a detailed sense. But we'll also have some very unique categories such as Best Discovery, Best Surprise Actor or Actress, Best Surprise Movie, Best Overlooked Movie, Best Opening or Closing Credits Scene, or just scene in general. We also have Best Use of Soundtrack, Best Original Score. Now, here's where we're getting to some of the more familiar ones. Best Animated Film, Best Foreign Language Film, Documentary, Best Cinematography, Adapted, and Original Screenplay, 2 categories there. And then we've got the heavy hitters of Best Director, Supporting Actress and Supporting Actor, then Leading Actress, and closing out with Leading Actor.
Yes. So a lot to get into as far as these categories are concerned. And as I noted a moment ago, Best Picture, that will be in part 2 of this episode as we go over our top 10 movies of 2024. Also want to note, in case you missed last week's show, episode 618, we went over our scenes of the year. That was a lot of fun as well. So you can check out last week's show if you want to check out that top 5.
Yeah.
All right. With all of that laid out here, are you guys ready to begin the 2024 InSession Film Awards?
What does ready mean?
Who knows? Who knows? But it's time. It's time we dive into it. As Brendan noted, we are going to kick things off with our individual special awards. As Brendan noted, these are anything separate from the official main categories that we're going to get into. Some of them will be pretty silly. Some of them, mostly mine, won't be. But that is certainly the fun of doing this.
It's a nice way to balance each other out.
Exactly. We'll start with you, Dave. What do you have for your individual special awards?
Okay, so before I jump into my individual awards, I just wanted to pay homage to Jay Ledbetter. I watched Here today, and he should still retire because that is a terrible experience of a movie. So, Jay, we love you. I'm behind you 100%.
And for those listening that don't understand what Dave is talking about, Jay over the years had this award that he called the Robert Zemeckis Please Retire Award, which, is pretty self-explanatory, especially if you've seen his films.
It's a great category.
It was a great category. Yeah.
Yep. And he should. I'm saying he should. All right. So, as JD mentioned, these awards can be a little silly. My goal ultimately is to make someone angry. I want to make someone so angry that they demand you take me off the show. That is the goal. So my first award is, and I just want to say I love this actor that I named it after, but the Keanu Reeves Exceeding Low Expectations Award. These are performances that maybe got a little bit too much publicity, or they were performances that I wasn't really expecting much out of, and they kind of got just above it. Okay. Gotcha. So first, and I will say this one is because I generally don't like the presence of this actor, and that's Jason Schwartzman. But I was very entertained by him in Queer. Really, really fun performance. It shocked me. Actually, one of my favorite performances in that movie.
He has a fun little cameo in The Last Showgirl.
He does. Well. Yeah, I almost included that too, but it's so quick that I was like,
it is brief.
That's right.
Yeah.
Also, I almost, as a joke, put in Pamela Anderson in this category, but I decided against it. The second nominee is James McAvoy in Speak No Evil, a movie that is very silly, very over the top, and he definitely kind of understands the assignment there.
Okay,
nothing to write home about, but he did his job. Tom Hardy in Venom: The Last Dance.
Oh my gosh.
A series of movies I am a sucker
careful
for.
Here, Dave. He's nominated for me in Best Actor, so you got to be careful here.
I don't.
Best performance of the year and the best movie of the year.
I mean, he is having a good time and doing exactly what you expect.
He knows. He knows what he's in.
Next is ScarJo and Channing Tatum in Fly Me to the Moon, a movie that I expected to be terrible and is perfectly charming. Nothing crazy, but just enough to kind of get you through that hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes. And the winner, and here is where I get people mad, the winner is Ariana Grande in Wicked.
Oh boy.
This is a performance.
Okay.
This is a performance that's good, but I feel like it's getting a lot of praise because people, especially in the musical theater world, thought she would be terrible. And she's not. She's perfectly fine and good. And I enjoyed the performance, but the idea of her being Oscar nominated is kind of funny to me. I think she is the lesser of the two roles in that, and not really a supporting role, but whatever. Not going to get into category fraud.
That's a big thing this year.
Yeah, it's weird. I haven't heard a word about it. It's so strange. So that's the first award.
Okay.
The second award is the Ava Green Innocent Award. The Innocent Award is for people who are in movies that were underwhelming or just plain bad, but it's not their fault. They are innocent. And that is Ava Green's career in a nutshell for most of her career. She's got a couple movies that are good on her level, but she's always an enjoyable presence, not just because she's beautiful. That certainly helps, but she's also quite a good, accomplished actor. And just needs a new agent, I think. Just picking better scripts might really help her. All right. So the first nominee is none other than one of the greatest actors of our generations, Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2. Gladiator 2, I think, is kind of a mess. And not that any sequel is necessary, but for me, the fact that they tied it so close so many years later was just like, what are we doing? And Paul Mescal, if I was doing a miscast award, Paul Mescal would win that. The idea of him being full of rage and unable to control, and then you just look at him and you're like, what a nice boy. He seems very sweet. It just doesn't work. But Denzel understands the kind of movie he's in. He is having a great time. He is constantly twirling his robes and using whatever accent he chooses in the moments, and just is having a great time.
What is it with Ridley Scott movies and fake accents now, or at least like historically inaccurate? I love it. I love it so much.
He just doesn't care.
Because
I
love
nerd.
That mode. That's what it comes down to. It's like he does not care.
It's like I've got Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. Of course, they're going to speak in Boston accents in the last.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Ancient Rome, it's fine. Whatever. Who cares? The second nominee is Jesse Plemons in Kind of Kindness, a movie that I was not very impressed with because I felt like it was Yorgos going backwards, but with A-list actors. It felt like his older films, but just like, well, Emma Stone, you'll come see that, right? But Jesse Plemons is legitimately great in that movie, and I think if that movie is better received, he's getting a lot of Oscar buzz because he's truly tremendous there.
Sure.
The third nominee is a double nominee, Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. Not a good movie. Has basically nothing to say, which was kind of disappointing because a lot of times when we have a auteur that is not from America talking about American things, sometimes we could get some really interesting insight that we're not aware of. That did not happen in this movie. But Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong are tremendous in both of their roles. I think they're wonderful. I just wish they were attached to a better movie, a more interesting movie. So that's really depressing. I just watched that recently and I was like, ugh. The next one is Monica Barbaro in A Complete Unknown. A Complete Unknown I am not a fan of. I think it's essentially a bad jukebox musical. I think the voice is fine. I think the songs are fine, but it doesn't have anything interesting to say about Dylan. He remains a mystery. We get it. He's a complete unknown, blah, blah, blah. But Monica Barbaro playing Joan Baez is tremendous.
Really good. Yeah.
So good.
She's really good.
Voice of an angel. The performance is amazing. Really, really excellent.
She had to learn to sing for this, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is crazy.
Amazing. Yeah, she had like a year to prep for it.
Just like coming out of the box with that voice. Are you kidding? Like, why haven't you been singing before? What have you been doing? So yeah, that's a tremendous performance. And the winner is Aubrey Plaza for Megalopolis. Megalopolis, I wanted to love. I mean, I'm an Italian cinephile. It's Francis Ford Coppola using his wine money to make his magnum opus. And it didn't hit for me. I can understand the people that love it. There are big swings, and God bless people who take big swings, but it really didn't work for me. But Aubrey Plaza, I would watch another entire movie about that character. Oh my God. Yeah, you want to talk about it. She's taking big swings left and right, but they are connecting. Whereas everyone else, it's kind of like, it feels like they're hamstrung by the Francis Ford Coppola of it all. Like, well, this is what he wants. I guess we'll do the stop. Okay, whatever. Just Aubrey Plaza, though, faultless, blameless, wonderful. So that is the winner of the Ava Green.
She's great in that
Innocent Award.
Yeah.
Good All right. Next up is the Michael Bay All Filler No Killer Award. These are movies that look amazing and have nothing to say, which is a little unfair to Michael Bay because he has a couple movies that really do have a lot to say. But if you take the average of his career, maybe not so much.
They offset each other. Some say a lot, some say nothing at all, or negative, right?
Absolutely. Pain and Gain, Innocent. Pain and Gain's
a movie rocks. That movie rocks.
Pain and Gain's awesome.
I think honestly, that's the reason we don't have better Michael Bay movies. Is he made that amazing film, and everyone was like, "This sucks. We're not interested in this. Where's the robots? We're not interested in any of this." So
you could say the same thing about The Rock. He gives a legit performance in that film. Honestly, could have been Oscar nominated, and then decided, you know what? I've had enough of that. I'm never acting again.
Maybe next year. Isn't that when his Safdie movie comes out?
The Safdie.
Maybe we're getting back.
Could be his second performance ever. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Be fair, he gave a performance in Be Cool, the Get Shorty sequel. There's a performance there. There's an interesting performance there, but not so much after that. All right. So Michael Bay, all filler, no killer. So first we have JD's favorite movie of the year, Alien Romulus. Just the best movie. He loves it. He has nothing to say about it, though.
Just masterpiece. Full on. Just don't go listen to our review. Just skip that.
We'll talk. We'll talk about it a little bit later. I may have it for our own personal category coming up in just a little bit.
It is a movie that looks good. It looks great.
It looks great.
It does a good job of using visuals from older films in the canon and kind of twisting it a little bit and making it interesting. I just wish they did that with the script, but they chose not to. So that one looks great. The next one is Twisters, a movie I enjoyed, but honestly, since the week I watched it, I haven't thought about it for a moment. It doesn't.
I enjoyed it in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun. It's big. It's bold. There's a lot of great special effects. I kind of forgot it was this year until I started looking. I was like, oh,
that's a good point. Feels like such a long time ago. That's a great point. Yeah,
it does. And then we have what we all thought would be a classic this year, Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. A really fun visual feast.
Oh my God.
Yes, unbelievably.
That just goes to show how eventful the summer was this year.
Right. There was a lot going on. It's really fun. It's stupid. Dan Stevens is having a great time. I love Dan Stevens. Just about everything. You get to see Godzilla and King Kong suplex each other without gravity, so that happens. So it's a lot of fun to look at. There's a lot going on. It's not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but a good time. A movie next is the one that I reviewed for InSession. The Lord of the Rings animated film that came out this year. Rohirrim.
Okay.
Has very little to offer if you've seen or read Lord of the Rings, because it's just rehashing old plot points with new characters. But it looks great. I mean, it looks beautiful. The animation is stunning. And you get to see Brian Cox in animation form punch someone to death. So, you know, you got that going for you. But the winner is a movie I thought I would love, starring Angelina Jolie. Maria, which I think is kind of a bad movie, but looks stunning.
It looks great.
Ed Lockman is the star of that movie.
Truly. And obviously, you want to talk about costume. She looks great. The filming is incredible. It's just dull. It's just a very dull movie.
I like the intent of it, that it was going for a bit more restraint when compared to Pablo Larraín's other two films in this trilogy, but I don't think it quite gets there. In fact, Dave, I think you and I had similar concerns about Angelina Jolie's performance in that movie as well. I did have a hard time seeing Maria Callas as opposed to just Angelina Jolie.
This is the problem with casting a movie star in a role like that. Right. And in a role like that, like, let's be real, most Americans don't know who Maria Callas is. She's not Princess Diana. She's not Jackie O. We have a image in our head already. So we have a connection to it. I remember seeing Jackie in the theater, which I didn't love, by the way. I think it's a great single performance, but I don't love the movie. There was a woman next to me in her 60s, this Black woman in her 60s. She cried for 2 hours. Because she loved Jackie O, and she lived through that portion of history. And I was like, oh, you and I are having different experiences here.
That's
and I don't think, unless you're a professional singer, I don't think you have that with Maria Callas. And I will say, my wife, who has been a professional singer, was not a fan of Angelina Jolie, and not the voice, because the voice is like melded with the actual Maria Callas, but what she's doing with her body doesn't match what an opera singer would do. So it's also not a good physical performance. So this is probably,
speaking of different experiences, I did have a very different experience from you guys. I
liked it a lot
in the film. My issue with that film, because I'm equally mixed on it, I do not love that it is a Wikipedia movie.
Oh,
it's
for sure.
the same
Yeah, for
story
sure.
structure as something like A Complete Unknown, and I found the storytelling very dull and uninspired.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and
you're not wrong.
It felt like he wanted to just go back to the Jackie Well. It's like, well, I
It's
learned
the
about
worst
this
of that
person doing
trilogy
the-
by far. It's the worst of that trilogy
Oh yeah,
by far.
for sure.
It's not even close.
But I did love the performance.
All
Gotcha.
right. The next award is something I just came up with today because I just can't leave well enough alone. Is the Steven Soderbergh Very Good Year Award. This dates back to Steven Soderbergh being one of the only directors to be nominated for 2 Oscars in the same year for direction. So these are people that had more than one performance or credit this year that was memorable in some way.
Surprisingly rich category.
This year
yeah,
was
this
the
is a-
year to do it.
This is a
So-
good one.
So the first nominee is kind of a threefer. We have Luca Guadagnino, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have Challengers and Queer. Obviously, Luca directed those, and Reznor and Ross did the tremendous score for both of those. Honestly,
Yeah.
if I had my way, both of those would be nominated for Oscars for Best Score. I think they're both tremendous.
Yeah.
Reznor and Ross, like, man, if you were to tell me 10 years ago that Trent Reznor would be a repeat Oscar nominee and maybe a Oscar winner for Best Song, I would never have believed you. I'm like, the 9 Inch Nails guy, the guy who I love? No way. That's not going to happen. But he's a musical genius.
There's
Like,
a great,
Yeah.
this is a bit of a side tangent here, but there's a great reference to 9 Inch Nails in the movie Soul that they helped co-score. One of the shops that's selling produce, one of them's actually selling nails, and it's advertised as 9 Inch Nails, which is
great. It's a
absolutely
great little-
hilarious.
Yes. And then that's one that I forget Reznor and Ross did. And that just shows the breadth of their work. Like just truly, truly incredible.
It's very versatile.
Yeah.
The next nominee is Saoirse Ronan, who was very good in 2 movies this year, even though I think both of those movies are kind of uneven. Her performance in both of them is incredible, and that's The Outrun and Blitz. Blitz I actually just got done watching today, and I have many issues with the movie.
Yeah,
but Saoirse Ronan is not one of them. Because she never is, because she's always great. She's like never been bad in a movie. It's ridiculous. Like starting as a child actor and all the way till now, I'm just like, yeah, whatever you want to do,
flawless.
you're just gonna be flawless.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. The next one is Glenn Powell, who has had one heck of a year. With both Twisters and Hitman, like a weirdly underrated movie because it was like basically only streaming. I have to admit, I have not listened to your best scenes of the year episode yet, but if the scene with the cell phone in Hitman is not in there, I'm going to be deeply angry at both of you.
It was a high honorable mention. We did talk about it.
All right.
we
Good
acknowledge
enough,
it at
good
least
enough,
in
good
passing.
enough.
Yeah.
Like one of the sexiest, most romantic, most
it's
fun
great.
scenes
It's a
of the year.
great moment.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Another nominee, Nicholas Hoult. I'm sure you saw this coming.
Oh, God.
Nosferatu, Juror Number 2, The Order, all great performances. Like if
Very
you were
good.
to tell me, by the way, that the kid who was in About a Boy was going to end up being one of our best actors, I'm not sure I would have bought it. But like, honestly, especially in Juror Number 2, which I just rewatched a couple nights ago, like
He's
what a
really good in that.
what a understated, beautiful performance from him. And for me, I am someone who used to work in substance abuse treatment. So watching this on the screen was particularly moving to me, like watching his struggle and not overplaying it ever. Just great. And, I'm wearing a Nosferatu shirt right now, so you could probably guess what I think of his performance in that. And The Order, he plays a deeply evil character, a very disturbing character, and plays it very well. And he goes toe-to-toe with Jude Law and really not necessarily steals the scene, but they're kind of fighting for control, and it really, really works. But the winner of the Steven Soderbergh Very Good Year Award, I am probably going to butcher this name. Please bear with me. Sayambu Muktapram, who is
I've heard it pronounced a few ways like that. Yeah.
And again, if we have any Thai listeners, I apologize if I butchered that last name. I have nothing but respect for this man and his work. He was a cinematographer for Queer, Trap, and Challengers this year. What
Crazy.
a year. Even if you don't, I know Trap is something that some people love, some people hate, but the look of that film,
it's so well
great.
shot.
It's
It's
very
so
well
well
shot.
choreographed.
that
and the way
scene
it
with all
moves.
the cameras, all the lights, as Hartnett looks back, I was just like, oh my God. And obviously Queer and Challengers, I think, kind of speak for themselves as far as his talent.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Again,
yes.
regardless of what you think of those movies, the look of all three of those movies, I mean, like, honestly, whichever one you want to give them the Oscar for, just pick one. I don't care, because like,
You can literally
oh
just pick
my
out of
God.
a hat.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure I have not missed anything. All right, we have one more award. This is the Lady Bird They Didn't Understand It Award. These are movies that I feel like I like more than the general population does.
Okay.
Where I get like, and I'm not going to include Nosferatu because, like, you know, who could possibly like it as much as I do? I've watched it too many times. So I'm taking that out of here.
Good.
And I tried to make sure in general, I didn't want to do a bunch of repeats with my, you know, our group awards coming up. So I wanted to kind of, you know, recognize some things that aren't recognized. So the Lady Bird They Didn't Understand It Award. The first one I was a guest on the show about, which is Wildcat. A movie that I was deeply moved by, and many people were not, which is fine. Not a big deal. It was, I think, an incredible lead performance. Great direction. Really did a good job of weaving in the literature background. I think it's incredible. The second one is Rumors, which is a movie I don't know if you covered here or was talked about at all. It's a very strange movie. I found it very, very funny, but you have to get on its wavelength. Cate Blanchett is like the big star of the movie. She's like the only known commodity in the movie, really. It's a very hard movie to describe. It's basically this leaders of all these countries come together to something awful has happened and they got to come out with a statement and like tell it to the world. And then everything goes wrong. There's like a, you know, zombie horde that attacks it. There's a lot going on in this movie, but it's deeply, deeply funny. The first 30 minutes, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm into this. And then it like clicked in for me. So you may watch it and hate every minute of it. It's a movie that very easily could be a painful watch, but it's in my top 25 this year. I think it's kind of wonderful. The next nominee is Small Things Like These. I know JD is also a big fan of this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, leave it to Cillian Murphy. He's like, okay, I won my Oscar. I have a blank check. What would I like to do? A sad, small Irish movie. That's what I like.
I love it. I love that so much.
Yeah.
What he's been doing his whole career. And he's just like, but this, but he's great.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think he's just as good too.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes of the year is that scene with him in the barber's chair near the end of that movie.
That's great. Yeah.
That is a very good scene. That's a great
wonderful moment. Yeah. And the last one, I'm sure JD will not be surprised. It's another movie that I was on this podcast to talk about, which is Immaculate. Y'all didn't understand. Y'all didn't get it. It's great. Clearly. Tremendous movie. One of my favorites of the year. Sydney Sweeney proved herself this year. I did not know. It was like one of those, I was not familiar with your game. I had no idea you had this kind of performance waiting. And, you know, that's on me. I hadn't seen a lot of her work before this. I hadn't watched Euphoria, and you know that I don't think Euphoria it's giving us great actors, great successful actors, but I don't know that it's like, oh my God, what amazing work is happening here. I think it's very it's got a lot going on, right? There's a lot of yelling, there's a lot of freakouts, there's a lot happening. And I think that probably serves her near the end of this movie, which is also one of my favorite scenes of the year, is her last scene in Immaculate, which will stick with me for many, many
That is
years.
a great scene. Yeah. Even though I don't love the movie like you do, I think that's a great scene.
Yeah. Remember, this is the person that doesn't like Brooklyn. I just want people to remember.
I have thoughts on Brooklyn later on in this conversation, which you might be shocked about.
Don't you kowtow to me. Don't you reverse.
It's called reverse psychology. I love playing that on the psychologist of this episode.
All right. That's my awards. I'm done. Watch Immaculate.
All right. So a few of my individual ones. We actually do have a little bit of crossover here, Dave. So I'll get to some of those pretty quickly. One of them, which I guess you dubbed your Ava Green award, was one that I sort of had. It was called Most Undeservingly Good Performance in a Movie That Doesn't Deserve Them. And I only had one person for this.
Okay.
And that's Lee Gill, Gary Puddles himself, from not just Joker Folie à Deux, but also in Blitz. His small performance in Blitz. Two movies that don't deserve
really
a good performance
his small performance. How dare you?
Hey, you put those words in my mouth.
You said it. You said his small performance.
It is a small performance.
But you're right. You're right. Yes.
Well, okay. Well, I guess that now transitions into my next award because of my comment there. What comment's going to get me canceled? And
here we are.
I guess that what I was going to actually award it to was Joker Folie à Deux once again, because I think that's better than its predecessor now that I've thought about it even further. And apparently that's going to get me a lot of hate.
Both suck.
Well,
they both suck, so that's fine.
Not much of a competition, but I'm at a point now where I think that sequel is at least trying to do something interesting.
The bar is in hell. Like
it's low. It is.
A lot of people really do love that first film, though. So
they do.
I can see where you're coming from there, Brendan.
And
if you've never seen a Scorsese movie, it's great.
Yeah, and this second movie comes around and says, y'all love that movie for the wrong reasons. Y'all are dumb. And I kind of appreciate that. My next award, I'm calling my Cheddar Goblin Award, which I do every single year.
Classic,
it's the best movie animal of the year. And I've got a long list of nominees here. No real clear winner. I've got Alfie the Cat from Argyle, Dogpool from Deadpool and Wolverine, Dondas the Monkey from Gladiator 2, I don't remember the name of the dog from I'm Still Here, but I just have the family dog in that movie.
Okay.
I also have all the dogs in Night Bitch. I have Frodo the cat from A Quiet Place Day 1. I have Death the Talking Macaw from Tuesday. And
that's the winner,
well, if I had to pick a winner, I'm going to pick the turtle from Sasquatch Sunset. The turtle that they try talking to as a telephone and then just throw it away.
Why do you hate the turtle from Conclave? What is your come on.
The turtle from
Forgot about the turtle from Conclave. Okay, this is a turtle-y year.
Did you take out animated animals? This was only live.
Yeah, I
animals?
did. Even though I did kind of include an animated animal there with the Talking Macaw from Tuesday. Kind of animated, kind of not. I don't really know what the actual definition of that in that movie is. But anyway, Cheddar Goblin Award, those are my nominees there. I also have Best Movie to Make a Drinking Game Out of and Not for the Best Reasons.
Oh, no.
That award goes to a complete unknown for any time when Dylan performs and the camera slowly inches in on Chalamet and you have these insert shots of someone in the crowd gawking over his genius.
You're happens die
every single time.
Alcohol poisoning. My God.
You'll get drunk very quickly.
You would be drunk very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I similar to what you talked about earlier, Dave, regarding Nicholas Hoult. One of my other categories was who is the actor that wins 2024, and Nicholas Hoult was definitely one of them for juror number 2, Nosferatu in the Order. I also want to call out Daisy Ridley, who had one hell of a year. With Sometimes I Think About Dying, Young Woman in the Sea, and Magpie. All great performances there. And my last award is for Best Double Feature of the Year. And my first nominee, The First Omen and Immaculate.
Oh, yeah.
Which also, maybe you can throw the ending of Alien Romulus into that as well in a kind of weird way.
Not watching that again. Nope.
I'm not either.
Fair enough.
A few other nominees I had here. Apparently, you can lump a lot of movies with The Substance because I had The Substance and A Different Man, The Substance and The Last Showgirl, and then The Substance and Smile 2. A lot of thematic parallels you can make with those.
Totally.
I also had The Wild Robot and making that a double feature with Flow, which we talked about a lot during our review of Flow. There are some parallels there. This is another one I didn't really think about, but I heard another critic say this. I think it was Alonso Duralde that made the comparison between I Saw the TV Glow and The People's Joker as two movies that utilize pop culture as a representation of queer identity, which is a really interesting way of tackling both those movies. And I think that makes for a great double feature. So I think I said that was my last category. I lied. I have one more category, and I'm gonna call this. I get one excuse to use the bleep button on this episode. This is called the Go F Yourself Disney Award, and I'm giving it to 2 movies
every year. Just whatever you choose.
I'm giving it to 2 movies: Alien Romulus and Moana 2.
Okay. There you go.
Screw you.
Okay, well, as I get into my individual special awards, mine are more or less the same as I do every single year. I will start off with Best Score Track of the Year. I have 10 nominees here because there's no way I could narrow this down to 5.
Of
I have
course.
tried in the past and have failed miserably, so I have more or less kept this at 10 nominees.
Just give me the 10. I'll cut off half. You'll be fine.
No. I'm going to start off with what I would consider quite easily the best 2 tracks of the year. That is, I Could Use a Boost from Chris Bowers in the film The Wild Robot, and Imagine Light from Top Sheet in the film All We Imagine as Light. Those 2 are easily the best 2 that I heard in 2024. As far as my other nominees here, the Overture Bus from Daniel Blumberg and The Brutalist, Match Point from Reznor and Ross and Challengers, the track Pure Love, also from Reznor and Ross, but for the film Queer, Memory is a Voyager from Max Richter for the film Spaceman, one of the more overlooked scores of the year. The film in general was overlooked, so understandably the score certainly was as well, but it's Max Richter, and so of course it's excellent. Evil Does Not Exist, version 2 from Aiko Ishibashi for the film Evil Does Not Exist. Arrival from Volker Bormann for the film Conclave. Acceptance from Gens Zilbilidis. I keep getting that name wrong. And
nice
Richard
attempt.
Zalupe for the film Flow. That score is gorgeous and beautiful as well. And then my last one here is the track Dreams from Jed Kurzel for the film Monkey Man. Those are my 10 nominees. And as I noted, my winners for this would be Imagine Light and I Could Use a Boost. Easily the 2 best there.
I love how you're like, I can't knock it down. Also 2 winners. Like, just can't make a decision.
Well,
these are our own individual awards. We can do what we want for these.
Exactly. There's been years where I've struggled to pick a winner and I've flipped a coin or picked them out of a hat. This year, I knew I had winners, but I couldn't just narrow my nominees down to 5. There's certainly a lot to choose from. As far as my next category here, Best Directorial Debut. The nominees I have here is Didi from director Sean Wang, The First Omen from Arkasha Stevenson, Janet Planet from Annie Baker, Dev Patel's Monkey Man, and my last one is The People's Joker from Vera Drew. I'm going to leave that one kind of open-ended at the moment because the winner for it will become clear as we get further into this and into the into
no spoilers.
No spoilers. So those are my 5 for directorial debut. Certainly some other ones as well, though. There were some really great directorial debuts in 2024. My next category here is Best Overlooked Performance. And there are a few others that certainly qualify for this. However, if they landed in the main acting categories for me, I did not consider them for this list. So Best Overlooked Performance, I have 6 nominees here. Maya Hawke for the film Wildcat. I knew Dave would like that one. Leah Seydoux for the film Beast. Julianne Nicholson for the film Janet Planet. Juliette Greppi for Red Rooms. Aaron Pierre for Rebel Ridge. And my last nominee here is Cillian Murphy for Small Things Like These. And I went back and forth as far as a winner here. Honestly, it is a bit of a coin toss. There is something about Cillian Murphy's performance, though, and maybe it's ironic coming off of Oppenheimer last year.
The idea of that performance coming off the heels of Oppenheimer, I think, just adds something to it.
I think it certainly does. But yeah, there is something about the quiet stoicism. And that whole film is predicated, well, some of these others, I guess you could argue, especially Greppi in Red Rooms. But like Small Things Like These, the whole film is built on his relationship to the camera. There are plotty things that happen, but it is mostly close-ups or extreme close-ups on Murphy, and he's doing all of the heavy lifting, and all without saying hardly a goddamn thing in that film. And it is stunning, absolutely stunning work.
Also, all those nominees, so great. Good job, JD.
Really good.
Not one
Thank
that
you.
I was like,
Appreciate
which is rare. So
Appreciate it.
I
yeah,
have
love
no
all those
comments.
performances.
I have no comments on those because they may show up later in other major categories for me.
It was very challenging. All of those performances at some point or another were in the main categories for me.
Yeah.
I think that's partially why I love doing this categories, because it gives me space to bring them up and recognize them in some sort of way. And also, you know, like we do with overlooked movies, that's going to be an official category that we'll do here in a moment. These are performances that, especially this time of year, as award season is in full bloom, these performances are not being talked about like at all.
There are a lot that you can throw into that, especially with the actress categories. Another stacked year for Best Actress in particular. Once again, not surprising. Lily Gladstone from Fancy Dance is one that just came to mind. I think might even be her best performance of her career yet. I love that performance in that movie.
Yeah, she's really, really great in that film too. All right, the next category that I have here, this is very similar to Dave's Lady Bird Award. I simply dubbed this "These Movies Are Actually Good" award. Is how I.
All right, let's see. Let's see.
A few of these are, at least given some of the discourse, I think it's going to rub some people the wrong way. Some of them I think are just
I like it.
Some of them I think are just bored out of less discourse and they just got middling reviews. So one of them was already brought up, and it is The Outrun, the Saoirse Ronan film. The Outrun, I think, is actually quite good. I really like that film a lot. Good movie, and I love its experimentation. I believe this was brought up earlier in the conversation as well. Megalopolis. It is very messy, I will admit, but I really dug it. I love, again, it's taking big swings. Maybe that is the theme now that I'm looking at some of these lists.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So far.
Megalopolis. I really like that one a lot. Wildcat, another film that takes some swings. I really like that film. I think it's very good. Dave and I had a really great conversation on it back at the end of August or something to that degree.
Somewhere around 100 years ago. Yeah, that's when we discussed
So
it.
Wildcat is the next one on here. The next nominee for me is one that came out and just kind of simply disappeared. I thought it was really good, though. And I think it's the best of them so far. A Quiet Place Day One, I loved. I think it has one of the more underrated scores of the year as well. Lupita Nyong'o, I certainly could have put in for overlooked performance as well. I think she had a really great year. You could also have her in Dave's category as far as dual performances, because I think she gives one of the better vocal performances of the decade so far in an animated film, in The Wild Robot.
JD and his cartoons, he just can't stop himself.
Love myself a good animated movie. But she's really, really good in A Quiet Place Day One. I only mentioned it in passing last week as an honorable mention, but I do think that bar scene near the end is one of the best scenes of the year.
It's good.
That saves the movie for me in a lot of ways. I love that final scene.
Yeah. So I really love that film. Again, this is another one that got okay reviews, but I feel like when you enter in the discourse, it's much more mixed, and certainly hasn't been a part of the awards conversation at all. My next nominee is Saturday Night, another one that I really, really enjoyed as well. Perhaps it's because I saw that on Saturday night, as Saturday Night was literally live on the air. Maybe that had something to do with it, and the meta universe kind of came together for me to enjoy that experience. I'm not exactly sure. But I very much did appreciate that more than a lot of other people do. And then my last one here,
like Dave.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you had that experience. That's the nicest thing I could say about Saturday.
Okay,
I'll back you up.
I'm happy that you're happy.
I'll back you up, Katie. I had fun during it.
I liked it. And then my last nominee on here, and this is the one that will probably rub some people the wrong way. Beetlejuice might be better than the first film.
Oh,
just
here
throwing
we
that
go.
out there. Maybe not,
okay.
but maybe. I'm just throwing it out there.
It's a totally harmless fine
I'll defend
movie.
it. I'll defend it. I think it's good.
Not interested in that defense.
It's perfectly fine. I agree.
Yeah, no, so those are movies that I will defend. I do really like them. I'm not saying they're one of the best films of the year, but I do really like them.
You heard it here. Top 10, Beetlejuice.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll put Beetlejuice at 10, Megalopolis at 4. Quiet Place Theater number 1. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, Beetlejuice. I mean, that is still probably Tim Burton's best film in over a decade.
Well, again, the bar is in hell. We're just
the bar was literally it was in hell in that film.
Yeah. I was just glad Tim Burton found a way to finally have black people in his movie. So that's good. Of course, he had to do it with Soul Train in the background, but he managed. So.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe not the best scene, but again, it's not a perfect movie. I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it's better.
It is now officially out of JD's top 10.
No, I like it. I still like it better than the first film. At any rate, we'll move on to the next category. The last one I have on here, and I'll be brief about this. I'm just simply calling it the June Squibb Award because she was so lovely in Thelma, and I loved it. I loved it deeply, and I wish that she was more on the award circuit this year. But sadly, she is not. But
good movie.
lovely performance. Movie. I wanted to recognize it.
Yes.
Okay. Those are my individual awards. From here, we will go ahead and shift to the official categories. And as I noted, up at the top, we each have our own 5 nominees and a selected winner as we go. Dave, we'll start with you as we get to Best Movie Discovery. And I will, I guess, offer some clarity because when we have brought this up to even our own staff, there's been some confusion.
What's happening?
I know. So we're not talking about movies. We're talking about craftsmen. It could be composers, actors, directors, whatever the case may be, production designers. These are discoveries for us this year. We did not know much about them previously, but we very much look forward to seeing what they have in store in the future. So that is Best Movie Discovery. Dave, what do you have as your 5 nominees?
Yeah, so my 5 nominees, the first one I'll start with is probably maybe the one people have heard the least about or not about at all. It's a director named Zia Anger, who made a movie called My First Film.
I loved that movie.
Which I was able to see only via screener. I'd never heard of it. I almost didn't even watch it, but I was trying to finish my 52 films by women this year. And I was like, okay, a female directed film, I'll watch it. And I was kind of blown away by the art of it. I thought it was truly incredible. Next is Arkasha Stevenson, director of The First Omen. Really excellent movie, a movie that took me by surprise. I was not prepared for what I was going to see. And, like just about everyone else, the only thing I don't like about it is how it had to kind of tie itself into the mythos of the Omen movies. But
such an afterthought, though.
It's like, it's going to happen, whatever. Yeah. And then Maisie Stella, who is the lead actress in My Old Ass, I thought was absolutely lovely. I'd never seen her in anything before because I think her big credit was she was on that TV show Nashville, which I had not seen, and just a really moving coming of age performance. Next is Keith Kupferer in Ghostlight. Just like, man, if you're into Shakespeare, if you're into theater, like this is like catnip. Like this is, it's such a pure independent film. Like it kind of feels like it was made 20 years ago. Like I was just like, it's not trying to be edgy. It's not trying to be tough. It's just telling you a really lovely story. And I had certainly never heard of or never seen Keith Kupferer before. And he may be making more appearances later. And the last nominee is Ramel Ross, the director of Nickel Boys.
Okay.
Another director I had never seen any of his work. I know he's done a few other things here and there. He's also a visual artist, a conceptual artist. He's done a lot of work. And
Did you see Hell County when that came out?
I haven't. I still haven't seen it.
That's a great documentary.
Love it. It's really great.
I'm sure. I've heard it makes like a really nice double feature.
They're visually very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the winner of this for me is Maisie Stella. Totally blew me away.
Okay.
Was not prepared for that performance. Like just from
Oh, it's
scene,
so good.
the first scene to
Yeah.
the last scene, I was just like locked in to this journey, and I was not expecting
She's
that.
so fun.
They
Yeah.
marketed that film so interestingly because they really push Aubrey Plaza's presence in the movie, and
Totally
it's so
shocking.
minimal. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I found myself liking it even more in the moment because I felt like I was getting something I wasn't ready for. So it felt
agree.
very
Yeah.
fresh and exciting. And yes,
Yeah.
Maisie Stella carries it so beautifully.
Yeah,
She's really
you're on that journey with her, and like
Yeah.
every time Aubrey Plaza leaves in that movie, she's kind of upset and not understanding, and so are
Yeah.
we as
Yeah.
the audience. You're like, I thought this was
It's
an Aubrey
really
Plaza
good.
movie. What's
Yeah.
happening? Just,
yeah.
But she really carries that movie. I can't wait to see what she does next.
Yeah, I
Good stuff.
absolutely agree with that as well. My 5 nominees for Best Movie Discovery include Michael Cheslick, director of Hundreds of Beavers, Juliette Garipe, or Garipe, I believe you pronounce her name as, actress from Red Rooms. I have Aaron Schimberg, writer and director for A Different Man, Connor Sherry, the young actor from Snack Shack, opposite Gabriel
Good
Lavelle,
stuff. Okay.
and Arkasha Stevenson, director of The First Omen. And I should say, with regard to how I classify or how I try to award someone within this category, it doesn't necessarily mean I think this individual is doing the best work of their respective craft. It's more so, who am I most interested to see do that craft again? And at this point now, I will be first in line to see Arkasha Stevenson's next movie. I honestly have no idea how that movie got away with what it was trying to get away with. Not even because it wasn't trying to do that. It's almost like they allowed her to make her own movie that then got sandwiched into an Omen prequel, and they still retained the artfulness of what it originally was. I'm kind of shocked that a Disney-owned property allowed that to happen. And I love what she was doing as a filmmaker, and I cannot wait to see what she does next.
Yeah.
I
Really good
love he
stuff,
goes from like F Disney to like, good job, Disney.
Good job, Disney.
Like, in
Good
10
job,
minutes.
20th Century
Like,
Studios. It's interesting though, because like as much as I cannot stand what Disney's doing on the whole, they're actually doing some pretty interesting things with their 20th Century Studios back catalog. At least allowing their respective filmmakers to kind of play in neat sandboxes as they revitalize some of those properties.
It's like the Touchstone days all over again.
Kind of is, yeah.
Yeah. It makes you wonder what the difference is. Like, who's in charge of what studio? How does the leadership what does that look like?
They probably realize these
weird.
movies, like this back catalog within 20th Century Studios, is not really their big money makers. So they're being a little bit more creatively loose with those properties. I get it. And I'm all here for it. I think they've done some really interesting things there.
Low risk, so go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating stuff there. All right, best movie discovery for me, or as I am dubbing this category, the Fred Heckinger is Joaquin Phoenix Jr.
He's doing this once again.
Because
That's
that
a good
was
call.
the biggest discovery of the year for me. I did not know that he had a doppelganger. Turns out he does, and it's very exciting. Cannot wait to see what Joaquin Phoenix Jr. has in store. And down the road. And that was another one that could have fit Dave's category.
He was in a lot
because he
of
had like
things,
5
right?
movies this last
Nickel
year.
Boys, Thelma, like he was everywhere this year.
Gladiator 2, playing the
that's
son of Joaquin Phoenix's character in the first Gladiator. I'm kind of making that up, but kind of not.
Could be.
At any rate.
Why not?
Yeah, that was one of my favorite conversations Brendan and I had all year long. All right.
Yeah, I just took a step back and it's like, okay, let him have his moment.
As far as my 5 nominees here, my first one is Daniel Blumberg, the composer for The Brutalist. Let me throw this out there. Take a guess as to how many scores he's done.
I'm going to say 3.
I was just going to guess 3.
Yeah, this was his second. The
That's
Brutalist
crazy.
was his
That's
second score.
crazy.
Are you kidding me?
Makes me wonder what
Unbelievable.
was he doing beforehand? He had to have worked in some type of music related profession.
Yeah. I mean, certainly he's done something in other areas.
He
and
may have done
clearly
some
he's been
production
really
work or
great at
something
it.
like that.
Yeah. So I'm sure whatever he did previously was phenomenal, but for that to be his second film score is just, it blew me away.
Sure.
My next nominee here is Payal Kapadia, the director for All We Imagine as Light.
Knew that was coming.
Yep. Absolutely massive discovery. And I believe that was only her second or third film as well. So similar-ish story there to Blumberg. My next nominee here, Rachel Lambert, the director for Sometimes I Think About Dying. Again, I guess there's a theme brewing. I did not really anticipate this, but I believe that is her second or third film as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away by the subtlety of that film. I am a huge fan of methodical cinema. I eat that up all day long. I know it's not for everybody, but it's something that I very much enjoy. And the stoicism of that film, I think, is full of a lot of rich qualities. Yeah. And I did not anticipate that. So I was blown away by that movie. Yeah. The next nominee for me, Katie O'Brien, the actress for Love Lies Bleeding and Twisters. I thought she had a really, really great year. Love Lies Bleeding especially. She was really, really great in that film. And I cannot wait to see what she has in store for us down the road. And then my last nominee here, another director, Annie Baker, for the film Janet Planet. Okay. Another film that I really, really love a lot. This
more methodical cinema for JT.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know, shocking, right? Love.
I mean, to call that film methodical might be giving it too much energy.
Yeah,
it could be. It's very quiet, very stoic. Once again,
yes.
Do love that about that film. Like I would have gone with Daniel Blumberg here if not for my winner, because I was really blown away by his work in The Brutalist. But the discovery for me, quite easily, is Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine As Light. I was
That's a good choice. That's a really
absolutely
good choice.
Stunned by that film. The first time I watched it, I walked away with this feeling of euphoria that I talked about on last week's show when we talked about best scenes of the year. I could not believe how hard I fell for that film, and I was able to give that one a second watch right before we did our review. What was it, a week or two ago now, as we are recording this?
Yeah, something like that.
And I wish that I could have recorded the grin that was on my face as I was watching it. Like, there's something about that film and how it immerses you into that world with those characters and how lovely that the characters are. I adore it.
Movies,
I adore every second
movies,
of that movie.
man.
It is,
and I think that movie is better the second time around. Like, it's really good the first time, but I rewatched it too. And once you know where it's going, I think it opens up a little bit more.
Best movies do that. Best movies do that. Yeah.
So Payal Kapadia, I cannot wait to see what she does next. All We Imagine As Light, certainly one of the best films of the year, in my pick here for best movie discovery. All right, let's move on to best surprise actor or actress. Dave, what do you have for this category?
All right. So for this category, I, kind of jokingly mentioned, I was not familiar with your game. That's how I see this. Like an actor who I did not know that they had a performance like that in them. So obviously the first nominee is Sydney Sweeney. I already mentioned that previously, that this was a very big surprise to me that she had that performance in her. The second one is Lily Rose Depp in Nosferatu. Definitely did not know she had that in her emotionally or physically. Star of the Idol. I was not expecting that in Nosferatu. Next is Justice Smith for I Saw the TV Glow. Just a tremendous performance. Like it's one of those performances that if you're not moved by it, I have a lot of questions to ask you, and I'm not sure we should hang out because like there's a deep connection. Because I think there were a lot of people kind of saying like, unless you're queer, unless you're trans, you can't connect with this movie, and I could not disagree more with that. And much of that is due to Justice Smith's performance. Maya Hawke, who we talked about previously for Wildcat. She's on that horrible Netflix show that I can't stand. So I was like, not interested. And then I saw this and I was like, okay, now interested in whatever you want to do. Because Wildcat was her baby. It was her idea. And that's the reason Ethan Hawke directed it, is she went to him, said, I want you to direct my movie. And how must that feel as a father to have your daughter being like, this is my passion project, only you can direct it? That's got to be a pretty cool feeling. And then my last nominee, talk about shocking, Andy Samberg in Lee this year. Lee is
didn't see it.
Not a movie that I loved. I wrote a review on our website. I found it kind of middling. I think there are a lot of mistakes made, but the performances are quite good. Kate Winslet, shocking, is good because she's always good. But Andy Samberg in a dramatic role. When I heard this, I was like,
Interesting.
And I like Andy Samberg as a comedic actor, but I was kind of like,
sure.
This is not going to work. I can't, but he's quite good and quite like, he has some emotionally resonant scenes. And I was definitely very, very surprised. This award's really tough for me to call. Throw the men out. It's between the three women. And I just like, it's so hard. And I think I'm going to go with Maya Hawke. I did not see that coming, both from a producing perspective and from an acting perspective. I think it is a deeply difficult role because Flannery O'Connor is not like, she's not a character like, oh, I automatically like her. What a total sweetheart. It's Meg Ryan and You've Got Mail. It is not that kind of character. She is abrasive and difficult and starts fights. And sometimes you're on her side and sometimes you're not. But I think she kind of owns the screen in every single scene. And she is in every single scene in this movie. So Maya Hawke for my best surprise.
Love it. Yeah, she's really great in that film.
Sure.
I love that performance as well. Almost had her for this category. Ultimately ended up going for best overlooked performance because I do think it is maybe that for me more than surprise. I mean, I've always known her to be a really great actress. But man, she really lives and breathes that character fully, and it's fantastic. I do wish more people saw it, or that the film was maybe better received. I don't know. I would argue it's still good. Either way, the performance is excellent. Love that pick.
Yeah, we have some crossover already in our nominees, Dave. I also have Sydney Sweeney from Immaculate and Justice Smith from I Saw the TV Glow, but I also have Ed Harris from Love Lies Bleeding giving a slimy performance that I'm sure he was certainly capable of, but not that slimy. That's what really took me off.
Very different for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have Chris Hemsworth from Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and Leslie Manville from Queer, who I didn't even know it was her for a good 10 minutes until
I knew she was in it, and I still didn't know it was her.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
That's
really? Yeah.
If that's not a good criteria for a surprise performance, I don't know what is.
Yes.
And when I say it that way, you would think I'm giving her the award here, but I'm actually giving it to Justice Smith from I Saw the TV Glow, primarily because of his back catalog, his back filmography leading up to a movie like this. I would never have expected.
What are you trying to say about that back catalog, Brendan? Out with it.
The screamer from Jurassic World would then give a performance like this. The kid from Detective Pikachu, really?
Right.
Yeah. So there's just the evidence wasn't quite there yet, and all of a sudden, wow, this is one of the best performances of the year. So good job, Justice. I'm on your train right now.
Yeah, excellent choice.
Yeah. I think what's also interesting about the trajectory of the year for Justice Smith, because spoiler alert, as we get into my nominees, he's on my list as well. So he does get the trifecta here. But before I Saw the TV Glow comes out, he's in the American Society of Magical Negroes, which isn't
also 5 stars, right? Like just a perfect
awesome movie. Another
movie.
masterpiece. Yeah. No, that film is terrible, and it's another Justice Smith performance. There wasn't anything all that extraordinary about the film or his performance in it. So when I Saw the TV Glow comes out and you're fresh off of that movie and that performance, his work in I Saw the TV Glow is even more astounding. It's quite remarkable. So I am totally there with you, Brendan. Justice Smith, a nominee for me. As far as my other 4 nominees, I have Josh Hartnett for the film Trap. Absolutely adore everything about that performance. Not sure we've seen anything like that from him before, but I love how he taps into that character. The definition of surprise. The next nominee for me is Michelle Buteau from the film Babes. I think she gives one of the funniest performances of the year.
I knew this was coming.
But
the opening scene is so funny.
So good. It's an incredible comedic performance, but there are moments in that film when it's more grounded where I think she's also really, really good as well. Those scenes are maybe the most underrated about that film.
I actually think she's better dramatically than comedically in that movie. She's always
I think
really
that's very
funny.
fair. Honestly, like as
you.
much as I love the opening scene of the film, I equally think of that breakdown she has when she's struggling to feed her child. Obviously,
incredible.
I don't have that experience personally, but I have seen that firsthand. So I know the depths of that grief and how much of a stronghold that is. And I think she taps into that impeccably. I mean, truly a great performance in that film. Now, the next two nominees, I've given out three. So my last two here, I picked them for similar-ish reasons in the sense that they've been around for a long time, but they give these large, fantastic performances that I definitely did not see coming. One of those is Demi Moore for The Substance and Pamela Anderson for The Last Showgirl. And my winner here is Pamela Anderson. Demi Moore, Josh Hartnett, Michelle Buteau to some degree, like we've seen work from them. I think what they did this year was really great. Certainly surprised me. That's obviously why they're here. But in terms of the surprise factor, other than Justice Smith, because that one was quite large, as we noted before, but there's something about what Pamela Anderson does in a performance I did not know that she had, on just flatly did not know that she had. And I think she is the strength of that film. It's a little similar to me in terms of what we talked about with Cillian Murphy and small things like these, because the material for The Last Showgirl, I don't think is great, and so much of it is reliant on her performance and the emotional trajectory of that character and how she gives that resonance. And especially when you couple that with the catharsis that we see in those final moments, I was absolutely struck by it. It's phenomenal. Really, really great. And she might be on her way to an Oscar nomination now that SAG has come out.
Possible.
And she was obviously nominated for a Globe as well. So I don't know.
If there is a theme, we have no idea what's going to happen, Oscar.
We have no idea what's going to happen. That's very, very true. But there's momentum there. And if she does get the nomination, I think it is well warranted. She's not going to crack my 5 when we get to Best Actress, spoiler alert. But I think she's really, really great. And I wanted to recognize that performance because I do think it is one of the best of the year. And again, in terms of the surprise factor, there wasn't a performance that surprised me more than that one.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wonder if that movie, if it had a better script, I think I would be way on board. I just think it doesn't quite give her enough to do. I think she's quite good. I think everyone actually gives good performances in that movie. Of course, it hinges on her, but like it's just not quite there as far as
it
the
feels like a first draft is the way we talked about it.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I think that is the prowess of the performance to me, because I still think there is a fully realized arc with the character that's not really there in the screenplay. It is all in her performance.
A performance is really good when it's almost functioning like a ghostwriter on the movie. In some ways.
It's a magic trick that she pulls off, and I just did not know that was in her wheelhouse. And
good for her.
She blew me away. Absolutely love that performance. So my winner for Best Surprise Actor or Actress. All right, let's move on to the next category we have is Best Surprise Movie. Dave, what do you have for this category?
All right. I am very afraid that I'm going to have at least one crossover with Brendan. I can almost guarantee it. But the first one is Ghostlight, which I talked about before.
Okay.
The second one is My Old Ass, which I also talked about before. That movie should have made hundreds of millions of dollars. It is like good for everybody, like family film. Everyone should see it. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. It's a terrible title. I think the title is a mistake. It's funny. It's a funny title. Yeah. But when you tell people, what did you see this week? Well, I saw My Old Ass. It's like, yeah, that's not that's not a conversation I want to have. Immaculate Immaculate is also in there for surprise movie. Thelma, which we talked about before, which is a movie that I recommend to everybody. Everyone's like, what movie should I watch this year? Thelma. Thelma is a movie that everyone can watch and have a great time. Yeah. No one's going to get offended by it. It's not weird. It's not artsy. It's just like It's a Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie with an old lady in it. It's great. And the last one is Hundreds of Beavers. Very much a surprise this year. I can't think of a movie that would be more surprising any year. I was so grateful to have been able to see it. And spoiler alert, that is my winner. Hundreds of Beavers. Is
wow. Okay.
Category. It's just, I think it's kind of a work of genius. It's like tapping into silent film. It's tapping into animation. It's tapping into romance. It kind of has everything. And if you can sit with it, because, it's a movie with basically almost no dialogue. But one of the funniest movies of the year, one of the most enjoyable experiences I had watching a movie this year. So yeah, Hundreds of Beavers.
It is a nominee for me as well in this category, and a lot of it is because of what you're saying. It's, there are so many movies that came out this year that really come out any year where we talk about a filmmaker really trying to challenge the form of what movie making can be. In the case of Hundreds of Beavers, this one is doing it with so much joy, and they're having so much fun trying to do that. You don't really see it that often with that type of sensibility, which is really refreshing for sure. So yeah, that's a nominee for me, as well as movies like The First Omen, Furiosa, Mad Max Saga took me by surprise. Love Lies Bleeding was pretty surprising given some of the directions it goes in the end. And then Smile 2 took me by surprise for how much better it was than its predecessor. I think that's a very effective horror film, at least by comparison to its predecessor. I'm not going to talk about this one too much because I already talked about it quite a bit with regard to Arkasha Stevenson, but I'm giving this one to The First Omen for all the reasons I talked about earlier. I just did not expect this type of ownership to produce this type of movie. I was really surprised by that.
All right.
Yes.
My nominees for Best Surprise Movie, the first nominee I have here is the documentary Babes. Absolutely phenomenal
I see
documentary there about motherhood and parenthood.
I feel like that's a new subgenre,
really
right? Actual movies that are or feature narrative films that do function as parenting documentaries of sorts. What was the other one? Incredibles 2?
Incredibles 2 is the other awesome documentary in that subgenre. Yeah. No, I loved Babes. It certainly taps into a realism you just don't expect when you're walking into a supposed comedy. And it is very funny. It's a great comedy, but man, it's grounded qualities I think are equally fantastic. And that did surprise me. The next nominee I have on here is Transformers 1. This might go down as the actual biggest jump in terms of the surprise factor, because the trailers and the marketing for Transformer 1 were absolute garbage. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. And then the film comes out, and I was blown away by how great it is as far as depicting that friendship and the ultimate unraveling of that relationship. I thought was really, really great, and ended up being one of the better animated films of the year. So Transformers 1 is a nominee for me. I noted this earlier. A Quiet Place Day One is a nominee for me as well. It comes out, gets very little fanfare. I missed it in its opening weekend because I was on my family vacation. I come back, I watch it, and I was blown away that it wasn't being talked about more. I really love that film a lot. My next nominee here, Dave, you talked about it, My Old Ass. Absolutely adore that film. And
see what I mean when you say it? You talked about it, Dave. My Old Ass.
My Old Ass. Yeah. Yep. It's a little weird. Great title. Maybe that's part of the fun. But no, I love what that film is going for. Like, and not just in terms of its characters or its premise. All of that is really great. I love the performances, but also like on a thematic level, it's a gut punch. It's an absolute gut punch. And again, not something that I necessarily anticipated, but really love that film a lot. My last nominee here is also my winner, and I am totally with you, Brendan. The First Omen is my pick here for Best Surprise Movie. And I don't really have too much to add to what you said earlier. Like it's crazy that this came from a studio, a major studio.
And a first-time director.
I mean, the way it uses surrealism and horror, not to render superficial thrill, but to create visceral mood and atmosphere in these thick, daunting, palpable ways. I love the fusion of craft and visuals with the storytelling and its, themes and commentary on religiosity. It's fantastic. So yeah, I don't know how Stevenson got away with that one, but I'm so glad that the film exists.
Feels like something Neon would have picked up as opposed to 20th Century Studios. It really has more of those sensibilities that we tend to see from Neon right now.
100%. And I believe you guys spoke to it earlier as well, but like it's also why it's ties to the first, or to the Omen rather, and that kind of coda you get at the end did not bother me at all. Like everything about that film is so inspired and subversive to perhaps what we would expect.
It's because the first time it's the first time we've had a movie like this that directly ties to another franchise, where that tie to that franchise almost means nothing. It's not like how Alien Romulus treats it, where it's actually crucial to that film.
That's the antithesis to the first element.
Well, Alien Romulus also means nothing, so there's a
it does mean nothing. That is a very, very good point. The difference is that it's trying to mean something.
Yes.
I agree, and I loved it. I thought it was really, really great. I love the first Omen. Certainly one of the better horror films of the year, no doubt about it. All right, that is Best Surprise Movie. Let's move on to the next category we have here is Best Overlooked Movie. Dave, what do you have?
Okay, so first nominee is Red Rooms, which we've mentioned a couple times because of the lead performance, which is a stunner of a performance. This is maybe the most disturbing movie I saw this year. This is definitely one that stuck with me. I almost don't want to give any details about it because I want people to watch it. And it is truly overlooked because, like, even on quote unquote film Twitter, even there's like a small group of people who are really excited about it. And everyone else is like, Red what? I don't know what that is. What are you talking about?
I know.
Great. Fancy Dance, which was mentioned by Brendan earlier, definitely overlooked. Definitely a good movie. Handling the Undead. I don't know if you guys saw that one.
Oh, no, I didn't get a chance. It's with Renata Reinsva, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's another, and also the guy who starred with her, Anders Danielson Lee. Also in this movie. They're both, it's like a weird reunion. It is not as fun as the last movie they were in.
And that one wasn't fun either.
I mean, it has fun moments.
It sounds like they took the worst person in the they took the worst person in the world and put them in the worst situation in the world.
Yeah, it's like a zombie movie that is a metaphor for grief. It's a lot. It is a very
sounds like your movie, JD.
Yeah, it's great. I loved it. I loved it. And then the next one is Lisa Frankenstein. Definitely overlooked.
Another blind spot.
A movie I really liked. It got really bad reviews. I had a great time watching this, and a lot of it is probably because it has odes to movies from my childhood. You know, it's very 80s centric, and it's lovely. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend people watch it. Don't listen to all the negative reviews, just decide for yourself. I think you'll have a good time. And then Femme is my last nominee. It's a George McKay movie. Another great movie he had this year. He was in 2 wonderful movies. And the winner is Red Rooms. Red Rooms is like in my top 25 this year. Really incredible. It gives you some insight into. We had a really interesting review on the website from Jalen Sala about the voyeuristic tendency of this movie and how it kind of turns the camera on the voyeur. And I think that was a really wonderful point. And it is a very clinical movie. It does not really show a lot of detail because it's about a serial killer ostensibly. It does not show a lot of detail. It shows glimpses of it, just enough to kind of get your imagination going. And I think it's one of the most expertly directed movies of the year. It did not make my top 5, but it's pretty close to being there.
Yeah. Pascal Plant's
has
direction
the scene
there.
of the year.
It's quite great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost could have considered it, not even almost. I probably should have considered it for best overlooked movie for me, but I may have more thoughts about it later on in this episode. So I guess slight spoiler alert. I didn't want to talk about something too much this early. So as far as my nominees for best overlooked movie of the year, I have Ghostlight, which you mentioned a few times already, Dave. I think that's a very good movie. I have Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1, which I actually think is kind of underrated. I actually quite enjoyed that film.
I dug that movie.
Yeah, I love it. I found it charming. I old fashioned and charming. I really dug it. Janet Planet, which we mentioned a few times already. Sometimes I think about dying. A few times we've mentioned that as well.
I clearly need to watch that movie. That's
So good.
It's quite good. It's actually stuck with me. I've liked it more as time has gone on. I've only seen it the one time, and I liked it initially, but it's kind of grown on me as I sat with it for some time. It's definitely one of those growers, for sure. My last nominee is also my winner. We Live in Time, which is a funny one to pick because, Dave, you know how much we love to go at each other's throats about Brooklyn. And I know this movie's directed by John Crowley.
Sure is.
I actually
keeps winning.
I love We Live in Time. I actually think this is the one movie from this year, more so than any of these others, that I feel like I like a lot more than pretty much everyone else. This is going for something that I thought was really effective. The the non-linear structure of it, which I know a lot of people criticize, just made the whole experience feel kind of like a photo album come to life in many ways, which I really responded to. So there was a lot about this one that really worked for me. This is in my top 25 of the year as well. I do think it's that good.
Interesting.
I say whoever is his casting director is doing a wonderful job.
Oh,
yeah. You have Saoirse Ronan, or you have, Andrew Garfield, like this is a well cast movie, like, and it's two watchable stars in it. It really helps because some of it can get a little dour given that it's about cancer. It can be a little tough, but like, I mean,
there's some levity here, which it really needed. And I think the actors do a great job delivering that.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Just like she did in Lady Macbeth. Just like Lady Macbeth, right, JD?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll go with that. I haven't seen that film in so long. I haven't seen it since. I don't know what this says about me, but I've watched that movie like 5 times. I love it. I think it's
why does that not surprise me? Why does that not surprise me?
I don't know. That was such a long time. That film came out like a decade ago.
Yeah. Brooklyn and Lady Macbeth.
That episode where JD and I reviewed Lady Macbeth was probably the only one where we disagreed on everything we had to say to each other, which has rarely ever happened.
Not a fan.
Yeah.
No, JD was not a fan. I liked it.
At least not at the time.
No, but then we coupled that with Cars 3, which I think is the worst Pixar movie.
Yeah, we went.
I mean, that's not exactly the hottest of takes. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
No, I know it's not a hot take, but considering that, I mean, JD kind of liked it. I thought it was hot garbage. So, I mean, I guess that's the big difference there.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff there. All right. Best overlooked movie for me. I have some crossovers to what you guys had on your list as well. I also have Annie Baker's Janet Planet for best overlooked movie of the year. Rachel Lambert's Sometimes I Think About Dying. A film we mentioned with Cillian Murphy. Tim Millent's Small Things Like These is a nominee here for me. Bertrand Bonello's The Beast is the next nominee for me. That's another one of those incredible international films that was liked enough on film Twitter, at least pretentious film Twitter, which I consider myself to be a part of at times anyway, depending on the film that we're talking about. But it wasn't really talked about on the whole. And then the last nominee I have here is Benjamin Ree's The Remarkable Life of Eibelin, which I still think is one of the best documentaries of the year that nobody is talking about at all. But you talk about an experience that if I was in that position, I don't think that I would have survived it. The idea of getting to live your son's life all over again and learning something about them that you did not know existed before, I think is astounding. It's an astounding premise that the film fully realizes in some really great ways with its animation and recounting those events. Absolutely stunner of a documentary. Love it. My winner here, though, is Annie Baker's Janet Planet. I think this is a wonderful debut. As we noted earlier, it is quite understated. I do love a good stoic movie, and this is a film that internalizes everything that it's doing with these lengthy pauses. There's very little dialogue to convey emotion and themes, but I do think there's so much beauty in the stillness of that film as it tackles these ideas of loneliness and longing, this idea that people come and go without much rhyme or reason. something that feels confusing as a child and isolating as an adult, a duality that film tackles, I think, with incredible precision. I absolutely love how the film conveys that, especially with one scene near the end. There's this picnic scene that kind of taps into a magical realism that I think is absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely striking movie. I love Janet Planet. Absolutely overlooked generally, but I think it's like, even of the people that have seen it and talked about it, like I would argue it's one of the best films of the year, and
It's good. Yeah.
It's just not being talked about in that way. So it is my winner here for best overlooked movie.
And I just want to say, in terms of overlooked movies, I hope people listen to this section and like start writing these down, because a lot of it, even if you're a film lover, it's not your fault that you overlook this. A lot of this is terrible studio behavior. There are movies that don't get released, especially, this is a pet peeve of mine, JD, now that I live in Kentucky. There are movies that just don't get released and you don't get to see in the theater. Like The Beast was here for 2 days. It played one time for 2 days. So if you, I don't know, have a job, then you can't see this movie. So all of these movies that we mentioned, I mean, both of your nominees, and obviously I think highly of all of my nominees, all of these are really good movies and really kind of stretch the form and are worth seeing. Like, so
I echo that. Absolutely.
Do the extra work, because the studios will not, because they're monsters. So it's up to us to put this out.
JD, when you and I were living in Kentucky together, we'd sometimes drive to Cincinnati together to go and see movies, because we had to. You had to.
I mean, case in point, I just talked to JD about this today. Like, The Brutalist today, as we're recording, is opening up in limited screens. And if I want to see it, I have to drive 300 miles to Chicago to see it. And it's like, okay, like Cincinnati, okay, hour and 20, I can probably swing that. I'm not driving 6 hours round trip and then a 3-hour movie. That's a whole work day. I can't do that. 9 hours.
Yeah,
it's too much.
It's totally understandable.
You mean it's not coming to the Kentucky theater?
It is not, sadly. I'm just happy that place is open. Forget about getting The Brutalist.
Yeah.
I missed that theater. I remember really liking it.
Access is certainly an issue. It's quite the issue in certain states and parts of the country. There's no doubt about it. And
I would say most of the country.
And most of the country, for sure. And to your point as well, Dave, we have to act as the marketers for these films, because there is no marketing budget for any of them. I know that I'm scouring film Twitter or Letterboxd or whatever it is, trying to mark down the films that I need to see in a given year. And often we're also, we're talking with each other about certain films as well. As we get near the end, a couple of times I'm begging or reaching out to Brendan through November and December. I'm like, what all do you have on your list? Maybe there's something that I've overlooked. And he's doing the same thing. We're just kind of cross-referencing each other, because we are the ones that have to do the research on this, because there's just no marketing for these films.
And at least Janet Planet, though, I think that's on Max, so that's readily available, which is nice. But I wish most of these movies we didn't have to go to such lengths, sometimes less than legal lengths, to find these movies.
But even so many of the algorithms don't prioritize movies like this for many people who have these streaming platforms, and they do have that easy access. They're not even going to know that it's there, which is where us as marketers.
And that's the thing. Like the 5 films that I noted anyway, Ibelin is on Netflix. And there's no fanfare with any Netflix film, or at least most of them. The rest of them you can rent on Amazon. But to your point, Brendan, how do people even know about these films? They don't even know to look for them, which is part of the problem. So, we do our best to be the cheerleaders for these films, but the
studios are spending more money for people to market their other films that people are going to go see anyway. So it just completely defeats the purpose.
Which is kind of, it's a bit of a paradox.
I'm just glad I got through that without cursing, JD. I'm proud of myself.
I'm proud of you.
Good for you. Good for you, man. I'm proud of you too.
Because I wanted
anyway, the last thing I'll note is that there are some other really, really great films that qualify for this category that I did leave off intentionally for reasons that will become clear down the road here. But those are my 5 nominees for Best Overlooked Movie. Okay, let's move on to The next category here, this is one of my very favorites that we do. This is best opening and closing credits sequence or scene. So best opening, best closing scene of a film. Dave, what do you have for this category?
Okay, so best opening or closing scene or credits. I have Queer as my first nominee.
Okay,
Both the opening and closing credits, honestly.
Sure.
The Brutalist, which I will not be surprised if those show up in other people's nominees. Brady Corbet certainly has some choices he is making with those credits for a particular reason. Smile 2, lots of fun. I really enjoyed the opening sequence there. I saw the TV Glow. Just the stylistic choices with the actual credits are just stunning and beautiful and set the exact right tone for that movie. Jane Schoenbrunn is kind of, I think, might end up being really excellent. I think they may have a career moving forward that is definitely going to be one to watch. And then
totally
Trap is my fifth nominee.
Good choice.
Okay.
So I really struggled to pick a winner. This was really difficult, but because I really wanted to give it to The Brutalist, but I think I'm going to go with Queer because those opening credits, they give the movie, and Queer is a movie I am kind of middling on. I adore what it's going for. I just don't think it really quite puts it together. There's a lot of big swings, and I love that Luca made that movie. I really do. But there's things that just don't quite come together for me. But it provides the tangled sheets, the feet. It creates this intimacy immediately where you understand that this is going to be a movie about connection and longing, like from moment one. And it is absolutely that throughout. It is that wanting that deep connection and practically killing yourself for it. And I think it just sets it up so well. So Queer is my winner for best credits.
Yep, Queer is a nominee for me as well. Those opening credits set to All Apologies, specifically the version from Sinead O'Connor. Really great stuff there. I also have Smile 2, the opening scene specifically, and then the title drop I think is very inventive. A few other nominees I have are the opening credits animation to Gladiator 2. Which basically,
that's good call.
Basically turning the Scott-Free logo into an animation and like
it's
opening credit style.
The same artist.
It might be my favorite part of that movie. Actually, I think it's kind of no, and I don't say that as a negative. I think it's a stroke of genius for.
Oh, it absolutely is. Yeah,
it's a sequel 75 years later. We're like, okay, we got to catch people up. Let's go. And I think it does a wonderful job.
It's able to do so without giving a bunch of boring exposition to fill people in. So it just gets it out of the way visually, which is really clever. I'm with you on that. But I love those opening credits so much. I have the closing credits for Sing Sing, which features the real life RTA doing their thing and performing. I thought was really quite sweet. My last nominee is also my winner. I'm actually giving it to the opening credits for Honora, set to Greatest Day by Take That.
Stuff. Okay.
And, and I think partially why I'm giving it to Honora is really the reason why I like to celebrate this category. I think the opening credits specifically, as well as closing credits too, but it's kind of a lost art in many ways. There was a period where movies just started and it waited till the very end for the title drop. It was a very like ongoing thing for a while, which for a lot of movies that did it, I thought was pretty effective. But there's something about the artfulness of an opening credit sequence. And what I love about the way Sean Baker does it, and really all of his films, but Honora is no exception, it's the way he synchronizes music with the opening text. It very much matches the beat. Every time a new credit appears, it's to the downbeat of the song. So it actually gives it this real, almost danceable rhythmic quality to it without calling too much attention to itself. I think it's really quite great. And he's done that in all of his movies. And I love it every time he does it.
Yeah, it's a striking way to open that film for sure.
Good call.
Love that. All right, my nominees here. I have Honora as well, but I'm going with the ending scene to Honora as my nominee here. The opening sequence to The Brutalist through the ship, following Adrian Brody there, and ending with the shot there of the Statue of Liberty. Absolutely phenomenal. The next nominee for me is the opening scene to Red Rooms. I think is one of the more underrated aspects of that film.
You
talk about a tone setter. The opening to that film is absolutely remarkable. And I love the use of the camera. It is anything but static, but it is phenomenal. Phenomenal stuff there. The next nominee for me is the ending scene to the Spanish Argentinian film Close My Eyes. Breathtaking, utterly breathtaking the way that film ends. Really glorious. And then the last nominee here, and it is my winner. I don't need to go into it a whole lot for those that listened to last week's show. It was my number 3 scene of 2024. It is the ending to All We Imagine as Light. That whole final scene and leading to the credits as it begins to roll is an absolute all-timer. It is phenomenal the way that whole film ends with the characters there sitting under the starlight. You get that. Well, there's a great use of dialogue between the 3 characters that kind of lead to that final shot that I think is really great and brings great closure to the dynamic of those characters and what they had been experiencing throughout the film. And you get that wide shot to end the film with, the stars on top of the frame and the neon lights of the bar on the bottom half of the frame. Again, with that score track, as I talked about earlier, Imagine Light from Topsy kind of overlaying that whole moment leading to the end credits and the euphoria it gives you as you walk away from that movie. It is stunning. Absolutely stunning. So certainly one of the best scenes of the year, but as far as opening or closing scenes go, it tops everything that I saw this last year. It's my winner for this quite easily.
Imagine Light by Topsy. I realized the other day, great song to run to.
Oh, is it?
Oh, nice. It is. Yeah. Yeah.
It gets me pumped up. I have a hockey tournament this weekend.
Is that your introduction song onto the ice now?
Well, I'm going to be listening to it a lot in the locker room. There's no doubt about it. In between games. Cannot wait. Cannot wait.
Good stuff.
Good stuff there. Best opening or closing scene of the year. All right. As we move on to the next category, this is best use of song. Again, I do love the variation here as we don't just consider original songs in film, but also Nito drops pre-existing music as they can equally have these impactful moments. So let's get into best use of song. Dave, what do you have?
Yeah, I'm so glad you do this, by the way, because I'm looking at my list and I think there's only one original song on here. Nice. The rest of them are kind of pre-recorded, pre-done before.
Yeah.
So the first nominee is Creep and the Air That I Breathe in Heretic.
Okay.
Come As You Are in Queer. One Less Lonely Girl in My Old Ass, the Justin Bieber moment in that film. Compress Repress from Challengers by Trent Reznor and Ross. And I think maybe my sole nominee from this movie, Defying Gravity from Wicked. Wicked, I'm not a big fan of, but that number, Cynthia Erivo kills it.
She belts it, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't pay attention to the cinematography, it's a really good movie. So
absolutely agree with that. Oh my goodness.
It's just too bad it's a visual art form. I mean, other than that, it's pretty good.
Song is good. The song's really great.
It is. I mean, and we've known for years. And I was really happy also to put the one from Heretic on because I like when a song is tied to the theme and the plot of the movie. It's not just like a cool song in the background. So I really just let me listen to Hugh Grant talk like for an hour. That's fine.
I wanted to love that movie so much more. I thought the first third, maybe first half were actually quite good. That was about it.
Yeah, it definitely changes after the first
not for
half.
the better.
I mean, and the winner is Come As You Are from Queer. I think it's, of course, thematically resonant, right? When you're talking about a queer character and a queer story, Come As You Are. And also William S. Burroughs and Kurt Cobain had a bit of a friendship near the end there. So I kind of tied into the author's real life too. And honestly, you could pick any needle drop from Queer, and I'd be like, maybe it's that one. And like it just kept happening. Like that one, I like that one. That one's great.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're all great.
It's amazing how it works, considering how a song like that and really every needle drop in Queer post-dates the events of the movie by almost 20 to 30 years.
Yeah, I love it.
Dave, are you're sure you don't like that movie?
There are things I love.
That's 2 winners now. 2.
I know.
I'm just saying.
I know. You know, it's just like in the Oscars when you get like all the below the line winners, where you're like, technically this is very impressive, but the movie never really comes together. And I will say, I really hope that the song from Challengers gets nominated for the Oscars. I just think that would be so cool if that happened.
That would be cool. You're right.
I would love that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Come As You Are by Nirvana and Queer is also a nominee for me, as well as Greatest Day from Anora, like I talked about earlier with its opening credit sequence. It's utilized twice in that movie, and I think both times it's really effective. I have Let Me Entertain You by Robbie Williams from Better Man. I have Starburned and Unkissed by Carolyn Polachek from I Saw the TV Glow. And I wanted to pick something from Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, but that's like, I could pick every jazz number from that movie and it technically works as a great nominee. If I had to single one out, maybe the utilization of Wild as the Wind from Nina Simone, I think is probably the most emotionally affecting. So that's my last nominee there.
It's like, my nominee is 3 hours of jazz.
That's the whole movie.
I probably could have picked 5 nominees from Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and I would have been more than happy.
It's the most Brendan Cassidy thing I've ever heard.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to go do that. 4 nominees from Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. My last nominee is my winner, and that's also Come As You Are from Queer. So I knew that was going to win regardless of what I had nominated alongside it, for all the reasons you talked about there, Dave. And it was also one of my scenes of the year. I talked about that in episode 618. So I won't go into it much again, just for white noise, but yeah, I thought it was really quite great.
I just love the idea of like, my nominee is jazz music in general, like just all of it,
just
like
all the jazz music nominee for me. 2024.
I love jazz music so much. I think I might start a jazz podcast sometime.
Good stuff there. All right, my nominees for best use of song. My first nominee is Kiss the Sky from The Wild Robot. Love that number and how it's utilized in that film. Starburn and Unkissed from I Saw the TV Glow is my next nominee here. Come As You Are from the film Queer is a nominee for me. My fourth nominee is The Homeless Wanderer from All We Imagine as Light. It's a great number that you hear a couple of times early on in the film and kind of helps set the tone in terms of the contrast between our two central characters. And then my fifth nominee here might come as a little bit of a surprise for those that know how I feel about the film. And as I was doing my homework for this category, I listened to the song and I could not get it out of my head. And I've listened to it 1,000 times.
I think I know where he's going with
I'd be shocked if you do. I'm curious. What do you think it is?
I think you're going with the opening song from Hundreds of Beavers.
No.
Because I know how much you feel or how you feel about that movie. I thought you were going
but you're
with
on the right track.
The Applejack song I thought you were going with.
Definitely not that one, but your mentality, your thinking is in the right place.
Okay. Well, then I give up.
The film is Smile 2. New Brain from Smile 2 specifically.
Nice.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. The songs kick butt in that movie.
Love that. Yeah, no, it's funny because I was going through Trap, right? Because I was listening to the album for that because I was like, surely something from this is going to really resonate because I listened to it when it came out. It had been a while. So I went through all of Trap, was enjoying that. And I hadn't really listened to the soundtrack to Smile 2. So I was like, similar-ish vibes, right? So I was like, I'll go ahead and throw on Smile 2. And then I think I loved that album more than Trap even.
Oh, I think Trap's a better movie than Smile 2.
I agree.
But I think the soundtrack is better for Smile 2.
Yeah, exactly. I was quite surprised because, when I'm watching Smile 2, and maybe it's because I was so disappointed by the film that the soundtrack just didn't really register with me in the moment. But then listening to it away from the film, it just hit me in a different way.
I need
I love it. Love New Brain. So that is my fifth nominee here. I have no idea how many times this has happened. not all that often. I'd have to go back to the archives to
3 for
do
3
the research.
It's 3 for
we are
3.
3 for 3 here.
Yeah.
3 for 3.
Wow.
Come As You Are from Queer is also my winner for best use of song. So
It's just
we are
that
all
good.
so
it's
smart. God, all three of us, so smart.
great stuff. I completely agree with you guys, though. The
that
way
Kurt
that song
Cobain,
is utilized, it's
that
perfect.
Nirvana, they were good at their jobs.
Not bad.
Really good.
Not bad.
Really, really good. I don't know if Luca has talked about it. I'm sure there's an interview where he has, but I'd be curious to hear him talk maybe in more detail, like how that thought even came to his mind to throw that over that whole sequence.
He must have good taste in alternative music, given Nirvana's placement in Queer. The fact that he chose to work with Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have a history with Nine Inch Nails, obviously.
Yeah.
Sufjan Stevens from Call Me by Your Name. Tom York from Radiohead for Suspiria.
For Suspiria, You're right. I mean, it's obviously a style of music that he clearly delves into and loves. So I'm sure it was always lingering there, and there's the symbolic purposes that you guys have already talked about. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. So it might have just something that came to him naturally. I don't know.
I actually heard an interview with him, and the friendship between the author and the singer is a big piece.
Is a big
of
part
why
of it.
And you just
Eric
like, you know, the title.
Yeah.
The title is like, it's right there. I mean, it's like, Come As You Are. Yeah. I mean, that is, and at that period of time, the only place that character could be who he was by going to a different country and fleeing the United States. And it's like, this fits. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Absolutely.
Great stuff.
All right. Let's move on to what is my favorite category of them all. Let's talk about best original score. Dave, what do you got?
All right. So this is always the category where I'm like, I don't know if I'm even qualified to talk about this with you guys because you are way more into the scores than I am. So I'll be happy if you hear my nominees and you're like, yeah, not bad, Dave. That's all I'm going for here. So the first one I know you'll like, which is The Brutalist. We have brought this up before. Phenomenal. It's actually the only score that I have gone back to and listened to numerous times. That's the one that I keep going back to.
It's almost operatic. It almost feels like an opera.
It does. Yes, absolutely. Second is Furiosa. A score I really kind of love, just adds to the kind of propulsive nature of that movie. I think it fits it tremendously well. The third one is Baby Girl, the Nicole Kidman.
Nice. Okay.
Kind of lovely score, and also adds to the emotion and the struggles of that movie. Challengers, we've talked about. It's incredible. I love it. And then the last one is I Saw the TV Glow, which really ties into that kind of synth late 80s, early 90s feel. And I just find it like kind of nostalgic, as I find a lot of that movie very nostalgic. So those are my 5 nominees, and the winner is The Brutalist. Just keep going back to that one. I think it's pretty incredible. And the fact that you mentioned this is like the second score.
Second.
Like, what are we talking about?
We talk about composers who are born to do these particular jobs for these particular films, and Daniel Bloomberg for The Brutalist is one of them, which is why he's also a nominee for me, as well as Chris Bowers for The Wild Robot. That's a score where he was clearly born to do that movie. As far as my other nominees, I have Bryce Dessner for We Live in Time. I also have Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross for Queer Challengers, as I'm calling it.
Cheater.
If I had,
there's such different scores.
I am picking Queer of the two. I am going to go ahead and pick Queer, but I do also want to note how great Challengers is. But you're right, they are very different scores.
Yeah.
My last nominee here, I'm going to say is also my winner, but I'm going to give it a bit of a big asterisk as well, because JD and I talked about this one offline.
I love you giving an asterisk to your own winner.
Well,
it
kind of needs it.
It makes
kind
sense
of
in context. Yeah.
My winner and last nominee is, and I hope I'm pronouncing this name right, Iko Ishibashi for Evil Does Not Exist. And the reason why I'm putting a big asterisk on that one is because technically this is not an original score. This was a piece of music that was meant as like a visual medium or complementary component to this movie and to another visual experience that ended up becoming this movie. So it was a very interesting way of how this was formulated. I mean, it's to the point that this composer is also a screenwriter on this movie, given the basis of how it started. So technically it doesn't qualify based on awards rules, but we don't go by those awards rules.
Screw the Academy's rules. Screw them.
That's why I thought you were going with Dune Part 2 for a second.
Nah, that's a good point. That's a good point. It's almost a similar conversation we could be having with regard to what I'm talking about here with Evil Does Not Exist. But given how much of this score literally is a character in the movie, it may not seem like one, but it very much is. I couldn't escape that. It really is why the vibe of this movie works so well for me, is because of Ishibachi's great musicality here. So yeah, this is my winner with that asterisk, because I know it technically is not an original score, but it might as well be, just given how complimentary that it is.
Well, I mean, you could argue that it's technically not an original score, but it's all born out of the same project. So it's not as if this was, like we've seen with Max Richter's music before, right? Where it was made for something else and then it's in 1,000 different other movies. This was all part of the same project. It might have started out initially as something else, but then it
You're right. Yeah. Like
this movie.
We often associate that great Max Richter track with Arrival. For that.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's a needle drop. That's been in many movies since then.
Exactly.
Not even since then, but even before then. It was in Shutter Island, the Martin Scorsese film as well.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is a very different situation than that. This score, and why ultimately Brendan and I landed on considering it, is it was all part of the same project. It might not have started out as this movie, but it ended up as this movie. So it does qualify. It does qualify.
You do what you want, Brendan. You make your own rules. Do what you want.
And it's the best music of the year.
Yeah, it's really great for the same reasons Brendan noted. It's also a nominee for me as well. It really is a character. I don't believe any of us mentioned it. Maybe you did, Brendan. Forgive me if I'm misremembering. But that opening scene for this film, it was very much a contender for me. It just missed out. Might be my number 6. But the opening shot of this film, I mean, the score is doing all of the heavy lifting, I guess, and the camera as it kind of sifts through the forest there.
There's a dance between orchestra and camera there. There absolutely is.
Yeah. I love that as well. And in the spirit of giving a middle finger to the Academy's rules, Hans Zimmer's work for Dune Part 2, absolutely a nominee for me as well. I think it is some of his best work in recent years as well. So
that was my number 6.
Have that one. Yeah, love that one. Yeah. That is a nominee.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I also have Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I will recognize that Challengers is great. I love it as well, as much as anyone else does. But I am picking Queer here.
Clearly not as much as everyone else does, because only one of us made a nominee.
Fair enough. But I will say, if we're separating them, it might be 6 for me. 6 or 7. So
they're both
outside.
both amazing.
They're both incredible. But
they're entering God mode this year.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm going to pick Queer specifically as far as my nomination goes here. And then my last 2 nominees have already been mentioned as well. Daniel Blumberg for The Brutalist and Chris Bowers for The Wild Robot. My winner here, though, as much as I love Daniel Blumberg, The Brutalist, likely on its way to winning an Oscar for Best Original Score, and I cannot wait to see that when it happens. But Chris Bowers is my winner here for The Wild Robot. I think what he does here, it's very similar to what we've talked about with John Powell in the past and How to Train Your Dragon. He was born to score this film. It's absolutely incredible. If you're watching us on YouTube, I've been foreshadowing this moment the entire time. Not only with the film and this lovely little poster. I don't have it. I wish I would have brought it in here with me. But DreamWorks sent me today the sheet music for the track I Could Use a Boost that I mentioned earlier as my track of the year. They sent me the sheet music for that as well. So thank you to DreamWorks for showering me with love for this film and that music in particular. It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning to me.
They have to send me a copy. I want to learn that.
Yeah, certainly.
And thank you to them. thank you then for doing that, because it let me be a jerk on Twitter today. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Of course, they've had to take an opportunity to jab me a little bit further. I should also mention they sent me the vinyl for the score some months ago as well, and I've been listening to that on my brand new record player that my wife got me for Christmas. So that's been a treat for me.
It's about time.
Yes.
Yeah. So, welcome to another hobby that will drain your bank account. Welcome.
Yeah.
You're in it now, buddy.
Cannot wait.
I had to stop. I had to stop myself.
It's bad.
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm gonna find it, but I'm gonna search high and low to get the Inside Llewyn Davis soundtrack. That is going to be my next vinyl that I get. Wherever it exists, I'm going to find one. And
I'm sure you can find that on Amazon. I think it's actually pretty readily available.
It probably is accessible. At any rate, The Wild Robot, Chris Bowers, what he does with the music in that film and that central theme, it is, I think, one of the best animated themes we've seen in recent years, hands down.
Very good.
And I just love it. Absolutely adore every moment of that score. All right. That is best original score. Speaking of animation, let's go ahead and move on to the next category as we talk about best animated movie. Dave's favorite, of course.
Oh, yeah. Cartoons. Let's go. My favorite.
Let's go cartoons.
Let's talk about cartoons.
What do you got for animated film?
I think this year for animated film is very top heavy. I don't think it's a great year overall, but I think the top movies are quite good. So my nominees, first, Memoir of a Snail, which is heart-wrenching. This is definitely not, I make the joke, animation for kids, blah, blah, blah. That's not.
This is an R-rated movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's nudity, there's suicide there. It is both one of the funniest and one of the saddest movies of the year, and I highly recommend, if you can get a hold of it, watching Memoir of a Snail. Second nominee is The Wild Robot. JD talked about it already. It's great. Whatever. Wild Robot, one of the best of the year, obviously. Transformers 1, big surprise this year. JD referenced this earlier. I saw the trailer and I was like, this is gonna be terrible. I grew up with Transformers, like literally had Transformers when I was a kid.
Yep.
I'm a defender of the first Michael Bay Transformers movie. I like Bumblebee. Like, there's a lot of Transformers stuff that I like, but I wasn't like really anxious to see it. And then it got reviewed. I'm trying to remember who reviewed it on our site, and I can't remember now. But it was a very positive review, and it's like, okay, I'll check it out. And I was blown away by this movie. I think it's maybe one of the best pieces of Transformers media that's ever been made. I think it's really great.
I agree.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And then after that, we have what apparently is the awards darling, Flow, this year, which is kind of weirdly come out of nowhere in the past couple months. Everyone's like, wow, Robot, maybe Inside Out 2. And all of a sudden, Flow started sweeping all these awards. And this is a movie I cannot be objective about because I own a black cat. And this black cat is in danger for like 2 hours, and it is a lot to go through. But also, like, from
a lot of stress.
From a craft perspective, like the fact that, it's just like a couple dudes making this is pretty impressive. And much like Hundreds of Beavers, creates an incredible story without any dialogue. And it's definitely worth watching. I do really enjoy that one. And then honestly, I got to be real with you, I really struggled with a fifth nominee. I really like these four, and then after that there's a big drop off. So I chose actually Piece by Piece, the Lego animated film. Mainly because I like the music. It's fine. It's basically a paint by numbers biopic, essentially. About Pharrell Williams. But you know what? It's better than A Complete Unknown. So I had a good time. So,
you make jabs at me about low bars. Now we're doing the same thing here.
Absolutely. My winner is not Piece by Piece. So that's there right now. My winner is, this will make JD so happy, I'm sure. My winner is The Wild Robot. It's a really lovely movie. It it has moments where you think it's going to end, and I would have been annoyed if it ended where I thought it was going to end, and it just kind of continues and creates a really complete arc. And you mentioned Lupita Nyong'o, who's always amazing. I don't even love the Quiet Place movie that she was in, but she's great. She's always great, just a tremendous presence, and does more with her voice than most actors do with their entire bodies. She's lovely. And she also, I really enjoyed in the press tour coming out and talking about the animators and all the work that they do. Cause she's like, I may be the face of this, but this is like 1% of what goes into this.
We actually talked about it we talked about this last week because, as I noted earlier, the migration scene was my number 2 scene of the year.
Sure.
But to your point there,
it's great.
Dave, one of the great aspects of that film is how it utilizes the neon lights of Roz to emote for the character, because she doesn't have a mouth. It's a robot after all. There is some facial movement, but a lot of the emoting comes through in the performance or through the animation, specifically how they use the lighting of the robot. It's really clever and intuitive how it's used in that film.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great, I will say this for you, JD, and I mean it. It is not just a great animated movie. It is a great movie. It's really enjoyable, and another movie you could recommend to anybody. Just really tremendous work.
Yeah, I saw it in the theater with my wife. She was crying the whole time. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And the kids in the theater that were there too were absolutely glued to the screen.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
You
can make intelligent movies for children. It's okay.
You don't have to for everyone. The universality of not just the story, but how it was made, I think, is really quite great. Which is why it's also a nominee for me, as well as Flow, Memoir of a Snail. My 2 other nominees, though, are Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, and love you too, Dave.
I'm just not British enough to enjoy those movies.
Well, I
agree.
I mostly just love it because I think it's a better version of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning.
Oh, come on. Get out of here. I'm hanging up. Like,
worst Mission Impossible movie. It's the only one that's not. Oh, Dead Reckoning? Worst one by a mile.
We're not getting into this. Continue. We're already at like 2 hours. Just please.
My 5th nominee is a very small film called Look Back. It's an anime film that's available on Amazon Prime. It's only about an hour long, but I think it's a very, very tender and loving tale about the artistic process of making manga, especially given the medium that it exists, and I think is really quite clever as well.
Cool.
My winner is The Wild Robot. I'll leave it at that because I have a hunch we're going to have yet another 3-way win.
Wow.
On our hands.
See.
Yeah,
come on, JD. Come through, buddy.
Okay. Of my nominees,
he comes out and gives it to Chicken for Linda.
Yeah. No, I watched that though. I thought it was okay. It's gorgeously painted. I do love the animation, but
JD, before you get into your nominees, do you think this is a really good year for animation, or is it a little off? Because I'm no expert on this, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, obviously, it'll all come down to how you view the crop overall. I do understand your point as far as how top heavy it is, and I do agree that, like most years, what we do get up at the top, I think is quite great. The difference for me is when you're getting to the depth of the crop. So, Brendan and I had a slight debate about this last week on the show, I believe it was, or a few weeks ago.
It was last week, on episode 618.
So the difference for me is that the depth here resonates with me much more than a lot of other years, even going back to last year. And last year was, I think that was last year, right? With Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse.
That was last year.
That was last year. Boy and the Heron, Spider-Verse, Robot Dreams, Suzume, some great ones there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't love Suzume as much as Brendan does, or perhaps others. But again, that's to my point here, is that a lot of us will agree on those at the top. Perhaps to varying degrees. Obviously, we all like The Wild Robot. We all really like Flow. Last year, The Boy and the Heron, and Spider-Verse. The top films are less debated. The weight of a year it's going to come down to how you feel about the depth of it all. And obviously that's going to differ from person to person. Suzume, for example, another film that Brendan brought up last week is the Pixar film
Turning Red. You're thinking of,
Turning
right?
Red. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, which I think is upper tier.
Much
Pixar.
higher on that than I am. I think it's fine. I like it. I don't love that film. So again, it's just going to depend on how you feel. And I say that to say the depth for me this year, I do think is much more resonant. So I would argue that this is a richer year. You could certainly argue that The Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse, perhaps that's even more top heavy than what you get this year.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
even with the like my 4 and 5 last year, as much as I liked them, with Turtles and I forget Elemental, I think was maybe my 5th. Like my 4 and 5 this year, I would take 1,000 times over those two movies, and that would be Inside Out 2. I really, really loved Inside Out 2. And I think this is another film that qualified for best surprise movie for me because I think Inside Out is the best Pixar film. I loved it. I've talked about it a lot over the years, how deeply personal that film is to me and how much it moved me. And Brendan can attest to it. He was sitting right next to me when we first watched that back in 2015.
I thought I had to call the hospital.
Yeah. So he can attest to my thoughts on that film. Inside Out 2, I wasn't really looking forward to because I think that first Inside Out is a masterpiece and I didn't really know where this was going to go, what they were going to do. And not only do they up the ante in terms of the complexity of emotions, which makes sense given that Riley is a little bit older and given where her life is, those emotions are going to evolve. So like bringing in something like anxiety here, I think is a really great call. And then, and this is where it gets, again, more personal for me. It is the hockey of it all. And that, like how they get that right, I cannot overstate how right they get it. I am not kidding when I say this is one of the best hockey movies ever made. Most of the time, there are a few exceptions, but most of the time hockey movies is...
I was going to say, what are we comparing this to? Like,
can I get to the Mighty
Ducks?
Like,
the Mighty Ducks? Like, there's not a lot of greats.
There's not a lot of greats.
Yeah.
But
I mean, maybe outside of Mystery Alaska.
Mystery Alaska is the closest they get. And obviously, with it being an animated film, it's obviously a little cartoonish, but it's like the physics and the movement, it is all extremely authentic. And I was really engrossed by that. And then how all of that coalesces at the end for me is something that, again, I just struggled to articulate. That moment when she's struggling with anxiety. And I guess to be a little transparent, the last month or so has been extremely anxious for me, extremely stressful, with external things happening, and so like I have been feeling the similar-ish kind of anxiety, and then I noted a moment ago that this Saturday, which by the time this episode goes live, it would have already have happened. I am going to play in this hockey tournament for the exact same reasons as what Riley, experiences there at the end when she kind of lets go of anxiety and lets joy, like she calls joy. Like it's not even just that anxiety lets go. Like Riley calls for joy, and then they go out on that skate. Emotionally, one of the more striking scenes of the year for me. And that's just my life. Like that moment has been my life.
Yeah. The movie does stick the landing.
I think it is absolutely incredible. There are certainly elements of it that keep me from loving it as much as the others. But I think on the whole, there is a great complexity to that film that I really do love that, again, I would take over other depth pieces from previous years.
I don't mean to make light of this conversation given how eloquent that was that you just talked about there, JD, but I love that you just spent 5 minutes on a movie that's not even going to win your award for this category.
Gonna win. No, but, you know, I did kind of want to talk about it, though, because, you know, you brought it up last week, and then Dave was asking the question as far as like how I feel about this category. And it is one of my favorite categories this year because I do think it is one of the best years for animation we've seen over the last decade. The ones at the top are there for a reason. But I do want to highlight that I think why I think this is one of the best years for animation. It is kind of what we get here in terms of these last few slots. Because I think Inside Out 2 is absolutely worthy of any nomination that it may or may not get this award season. And then for all the reasons Dave talked about, and I think I mentioned it earlier as well, because it was a nominee for me for Best Surprise Movie, is Transformers 1.
A lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Truly blown away by that film as well. And like I love its depiction of friendship and heartache. There's an earnestness to it. It's really refreshing. The vocal performances in that film, I think, are really, really great as well. I think that's a smarter movie than it gets credit for.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
I just wanted to say, like, the only issue I have really with Inside Out 2, like, a lot of people I think were really angry about that movie, like more angry than maybe any adult should be about a cartoon, but really upset. But what I had heard is behind the scenes, this ties into your F Disney award, which is I would have given it for this, is when the movie first was finished, the Disney executives said that the lead character came off as too gay. So they made changes to the movie to make her more heterosexual. And I was like, and I have a hard time. I will admit, I had a hard time getting that out of my mind when I was watching that movie. And I was like, screw you
That's
guys.
Fair.
This
fair.
thing.
Yeah.
Like,
which
we should be better than that at this point. Like, come on.
And I like, and again,
that's a fair point.
I think I can separate the two, especially given the hockey of it all and my relationship with hockey there. But I do agree with you. And that is kind of infuriating because even though they may have removed those elements, you can absolutely see the seeds of what they were going for with Riley.
Sure.
Yeah.
So removing that it does make it a little disingenuous.
Because no adolescent has ever questioned their sexuality ever.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about? Come on.
And I mean, and she's 11, so that she was certainly going to start the process of that for sure.
Prime age for that sort of confusion for sure. Yeah,
totally.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they should commit to that if they're going to make an Inside Out 3. But you know, it's Disney, so they're probably not.
Well, it did very well. I'm
will
sure there's
not.
going to be. I'm sure there's going to be an Inside Out 3, regardless if they commit to that or not. Is another question.
Yes.
I know. At any rate, I think that and Transformers 1, which if I'm ranking them, those are my 3 and 4, or my 4 and 5, excuse me. I still think those are really, really good animated films. I would argue. I understand that's not the case for everybody, but I would argue they're still really, really good. And then you follow those up with Memoir of a Snail, which is excellent, really fantastic. Flow has been, it just won the Golden Globe. It might even surprise at the Oscars.
Kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, not coming out of nowhere. Everyone knew it existed, but it's making a few surprise victories that no one expected, which is kind of neat.
It is kind of neat, but yes, to all of that to say, my winner here is, of course, The Wild Robot.
9 minutes again, for Ditto.
Yeah.
All right. So it means you have to talk for negative 9 minutes when we get to Best Foreign Language Film.
That's not going to happen.
It's certainly possible. I'll just quickly say, because there's so much to love about that film as well, but like as much as I love certain scenes, I love the score, obviously, of it. I just love fundamentally the little gags, the symbolism they have throughout the film, or these lines of dialogue from Roz about, like how she is programmed and how the film kind of subverts that when she takes on the responsibility of being a parent, and like that discovery. Is something that everyone will go through when you have kids.
Sure.
That and like how the film taps into that, I think is really incredible. And I think that's why you do see a lot of parents responding to this heavily. When I took Sam to see this in the theater, and the kids were obviously having a great time, every single parent around me, undone. All of them just completely undone. Like it really does speak to speak to parenthood in a really deep, evocative way. So, stunning film. Absolutely love it.
Good stuff.
All right, let's move on to best international film. And given my winner here, I can be pretty brief, so I'll let you guys take the floor here. Best international film, Dave. What do you got?
So when I came up with my nominees, I made the decision to remove animation and remove documentaries from this, just narrative films, because I wanted to celebrate the most amount of films that I could.
Absolutely. I did the same.
I try not to double up with a lot of awards, so take that for what it's worth. Nominees, big surprise, All We Imagine Is Light. We have already talked many, many times about this movie. And one thing that I said online that I still hold true to is that this movie has a scene with a woman and a rice cooker that has more romance and longing than you will see in any movie featuring a romantic pairing this entire year. It's beautiful.
It was an honorable mention for me last week. Yeah,
great scene.
So good.
Really great. So All We Imagine Is Light. The second one is I'm Still Here, which I was very happy to see Fernanda Torres win a Golden Globe for this performance. Just like I listened to your episode when you guys were talking about it, and whether you think this is just like a decent movie surrounded by a great performance or something more than that, I think it's absolutely worth the watch. I think I'm more on JD's side because I really like the family structure bits in the beginning. Like I mentioned in my review on the site that I would watch a whole movie of just if this wasn't a true story, if this was fictional, I would watch just a family drama with this entire family. I just think they're all very, very watchable. The third one is Red Rooms, which we have talked about already a couple times. The fourth is The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and I think I am similar to your all's take on that movie, where the first 2/3 of it is like a 9-star movie, and then it's like, oh, well, where are we going? No, wait, we were doing so well. But I will say,
falls into conventionality by that point.
But I will say that this movie, anytime you ever again hear someone say, oh, how courageous to make this movie, how brave, tell them to shut up, tell them to stop talking, because this man who directed this movie risked imprisonment and death to make this movie. You want to talk about
literally
passion for your art? I mean, he made this movie in secret and directed it via Zoom in some cases. It is incredible that it is as good as it is.
And they can never go home now, him or the cast.
Talk about sacrifice.
I was just going to say, what a sacrifice. You have to respect that. I love that the movie exists. I wish I liked it more, but I have so much respect for what it is and what it got away with.
Absolutely. And then the last nominee I just watched, thanks to JD and no thanks to Brendan, The Count of Monte Cristo, which I loved. That is a book that I adore. And it is the first time I've seen many filmed and televised versions of it. This is the first one that I feel like got it right. And I was so impressed. Like even though JD is like, this is great. I'm like, okay, is it though? Like, all right, we'll see. And I was like, and I get it. I think it's the first time that the introduction to this story actually works, which is so necessary. You need to know what he has lost. And I think you really do feel that. So I loved Count of Monte Cristo. Surprise, surprise, the winner is All We Imagine Is Light. I mean, it's one of the best movies of the year. It's incredible. It is, but I will say, I don't think it's one of those movies that you have to stick with. I think pacing wise, the first half hour to 45 minutes, it can be a little like, okay, where are we headed here? What's going on? Who are these people? But if you're patient, it is a deeply rewarding movie. Just lovely, beautiful. You mentioned the final scene, and there are 4 or 5 scenes in this movie that I would be totally fine if that was one of your top 5 of the year. Like, incredible. So All We Imagine Is Light, best international film.
I wonder if we'll have another 3-way win here. We'll see how things go. Although,
so is this you saying All We Imagine
It is. Yeah, this is my winner. I'm just going to come right out and say that because this is one of those categories I was almost tempted to not want to give a winner, but I really want to see if we have 3 the three of us are picking this movie to see if we have that trend going once again. The reason why I didn't want to give a winner here is because all 5 of my nominees are on my top 20 of the year. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself as far as how tightly represented they are when it gets to my actual favorites of the year, which includes All We Imagine Is Light, Close Your Eyes, the Victor Rice film, Evil Does Not Exist, How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, the Thai film that I think is really quite beautiful, and then Red Rooms, which you also talked about there, Dave. All 5 of these are in my top 20 in some capacity. My
those other 3 I haven't even seen, so maybe they would be high on mine too. So
I'd be curious to see what you think about them. Yeah. All We Imagine Is Light is my winner, though. But for reasons people will probably notice if they tune into this whole episode, God forbid if you do. And then if you go and then listen to part 2, when you notice how the ranking is structured on mine, you'll be like, oh, well, this just kind of spoils the surprise on Brendan's list.
Fair enough.
Well, don't worry. That's in like 25 hours. So like, don't forget.
You get to wait a long time.
Yeah, exactly. All right. My nominees then for Best International Film. I also have Red Rooms. I have Evil Does Not Exist from Ryosuke Hamaguchi. All We Imagine Is Light, Payal Kapadia. I noted earlier The Beast, the French film from Bertrand Bonello.
Yeah.
And then my last nominee here, Do Not Expect Too Much from The End of the World from Rada Jude. Those are my 5 nominees here.
Yeah, sadly did not get the chance to finish this one in time.
Yeah. Hopefully you get a chance to finish by the time we do the top 10 show, and maybe you can circle back with some thoughts.
I'm an hour into it, and I'll admit right now I'm not really digging it yet. But I'm curious to see where it goes.
Well, it's 47 hours long, so there's plenty of time.
There's plenty of time for it to come up for sure.
See, now JD, you've made me feel foolish because one of the movies, I won't say which one, but one of the movies you just mentioned probably should have won because it's in my, you'll hear it in the next episode. So
okay, fair enough.
Just forgot to include it.
All right, there you go. So Dave will have to circle back.
That's right.
So yeah, my winner here, we're 3 for 3 again. All We Imagine Is Light, Payal Kapadia. I will note though, to Dave's point, and while I do understand what you're saying there, Dave, I think for me, even on a first watch, and this circles back to something I noted when we were doing Best Use of Song, because I noted that one of my nominees there was The Needle Drop, The Homeless Wanderer. And that's a cue that plays a couple of different times early on in that film. So even if it does take a while for the film to, start building its narrative and who these characters are and what their struggle is, there's something about Payal Kapadia's filmmaking that enamored me. I was wholly hooked by the film and its emotion and what it was doing. Like that whole scene when she's there in the doctor's office just playing with the stethoscope and just on her phone and like she's doing nothing, and I was entranced by the moment. Like there's just something about the craft of it, again, that music, the Homeless Wanderer there,
and her presence in that scene. She's incredible.
Performance, just the visualization of what she's actually texting, the utilization of it as text on screen is really quite clever too.
I love it. So even though it takes a minute for the drama to start to infiltrate the film, the filmmaking more than makes up for that, I think. Just beautiful filmmaking. I love it. All right, so that is Best International Film. We have crossed over on 3 different categories. That is for sure a first time. I don't think we've ever done that before.
Good minds think alike.
That's right. We finally got rid of that dead weight on this show. And got some
To quote Skylar from Smile 2, to just add some differences here, Doctor, I need a new brain.
Brain, which is why I love that song. I need a new brain. Good stuff. All right, Best Documentary. What do you got?
All right, this was, opposite of animation for me. This is a really good year for documentaries. Or maybe I just watched more documentaries this year. Maybe that's it. But there were great documentaries that I took off my list that in any other year I feel like would have been in the top 5.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I'll start with The Remarkable Life of Evelyn. I was shocked by how much I like this movie. I was not expecting to. I'm not like a World of Warcraft person. I'm not. But I am a person who has built relationships in communities online.
Yeah.
Online communities are the reason I'm in Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy Mike, who I've podcasted with, who you've had on the show, Mike Dennison.
Shout out Mike.
We're buddies. I came to his wedding and ended up moving out here. And I have, because of podcasting, I have an entire community of people in Lexington, Kentucky. Like I ended up having more friends in Kentucky than in California. And it was like, so watching this, as a start, I was like, okay, this is nice. Families getting to experience their son's life in a way that they never were able to. It's more full. It's more exciting. That's really cool. And as you mentioned earlier, JD, the way they use the animation here to literally color his online life was really moving. But the scene, one of my favorite scenes of the year in any movie, is one of his World of Warcraft friends giving a hug to his father at his funeral. And it was so like, I was just like, man, it was
very
brutal
moving.
to watch.
So moving.
Like you knew my son in a way I never could. And thank you for being his friend. Like what an impactful moment that was. So definitely worth watching. It's, as JD mentioned, it's on Netflix, readily available for like probably 99% of the people listening to this probably have Netflix. So highly, highly recommend that. The next one is definitely I don't know if it's as good as I think it is. It's a very personal pick. The Superman documentary about Christopher Reeve.
Oh, yeah.
My dad, who passed away a few years ago, the Superman movies were his favorite. And he shared that with me. So I remember vividly when that accident happened, and when he lost the use of many parts of his body. And I remember it being a very emotional moment. So I basically cried the entire runtime of that movie. Like just dad's presence was there. And it was just like, so I couldn't possibly leave it off the list. I think it's also quite good and quite moving and an interesting discussion of disability and a really wonderful discussion of grief and what family means. I found it really impactful and really moving. I was lucky enough to actually be able to see it in the theater, and then I regretted it because I was crying the entire time. I was like, maybe home would be a better.
It gets the perseverance of that man so right, regardless of how you feel about the movie as a movie. But it gets that crucial thing right.
And his change, where he realized, like, I don't have to push so hard. I don't have to be tough dad. I can just love my kids. I can just be there for him. And the fact that it took a debilitating injury for him to slow down enough to just be like, not everything is about performance. It could just be about watching TV with my son and holding him close in whatever way I can. And I'm not even a parent. And I was like, oh God, this is a lot. So yeah, definitely recommend that one. It's one that missed the shortlist for the Academy, unfortunately, but I understand why, because like I said, really good, really big year for documentaries. The next one will make Brendan happy. Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. I thought was incredible. Honestly, just as a mixed media piece. It is not your normal documentary. It uses a lot of tech. It's not just a bunch of talking heads. It uses a lot of video. It uses a lot of different techniques, a lot of different styles, and which makes sense with the form of jazz, right? I mean, it's like many different styles kind of ad-libbed, all thrown together, but yet it works as a complete piece. And it also educated me on the history of a country that I had no idea about. So that was nice to like walk away from and be like, oh, I know a little something about this now. So I really enjoyed that one. The next one is Sugarcane, the first of two documentaries that will rip your friggin' heart out, because this is about native schools in Canada, where many years later they discovered, bodies of the native kids and everything that they went through, and
very similar to Nickel Boys in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Horrifyingly similar to Nickel Boys. Yeah.
Actually, that's another great double feature. I should have mentioned that earlier in my earlier nominees.
I don't know if I can watch those back to back, man. That might be too much for me back to back.
I guess I have thick skin. I don't know.
I remember hearing about this news story when it first broke. And our writer Will Bjarnar, one of our favorites, he did the review for that, and I remember reading it, and I was like, oh well, this will ruin my night. Let's watch that, and it did, in the best possible way. It's a story that needs to be told. These difficult stories need to be told, even if they're hard for us to see. And speaking of hard for us to see, the winner, which also probably would have won my best international film if I left it there, is No Other Land. This is a movie that first displays the cowardice of film companies. The fact that this has not been distributed is disgusting.
Wild.
Because this is one of the best documentaries of the past 10 years. It is incredible. It is the fact that we have an Israeli man and a Palestinian man working together to film this.
Cultural unity.
You couldn't write it any better. And this actually happened. And yes, there are moments that are hard to watch, but they should be. We need
That's the point.
to see this. And I think the part that affected me most in this movie is the Israeli man who is, writing these articles about it and trying to put a stop to it. He basically stands in front of this violence, and they ask him, like, why do you even bother? It doesn't affect you. And he says, because you're doing it in my name. And that part, I was like, ooh, that is something we need to pay attention to, not just in this conflict, but in every conflict. Because think of the things as Americans that are done in our name. There's a lot of violence and heinous behavior within our country and without that we need to start putting a check on. And because it's being done in our name. And this movie, I think it's only like an hour and a half. But
it's pretty brief.
It feels like you ran a marathon after you watch this movie, because it
feels dangerous.
It hits hard, and this is the best documentary of the year, maybe the best documentary of the decade. It should be, and I don't say this about very many documentaries, this should be required viewing. Everyone should watch this. I think even if you don't think it's the best documentary of the year, I don't think it's arguable that it's the most important documentary of the year.
For sure.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think all of these documentaries that we're going to be talking about are going to be required viewing, or at least we feel like they're required viewing, because I think there's something so culturally crucial about all of them. No Other Land is a great example as to why that is. Whether you think it is the best or not, it is the most crucial. It is the most important, I think. And Dave, as much as I hate agreeing with you every step of the way, we are lockstep 80% of the way on this category. No Other Land, The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and Sugarcane are all my nominees. My fifth one's Dahomey, which I think is a really
that was my number 6, so we're pretty close.
We're pretty close. We're pretty close. I think my 6 might have been Sperm World, if I had to pick a 6th one there, which is a really interesting one. But those are my 5 there. As much as I do agree that No Other Land is perhaps the best documentary of the year, I am giving it to Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, because it was just, it's surprise, right?
We're all
the documentary that was tailor-made for Brendan Cassidy.
You got to be you. I respect it. I respect it.
There's no way I wasn't going to pick this one. It was tailor-made for me. But even so, outside of just the subjectivity that I have towards it, the fusion of jazz history with actual history, I think is so cleverly done, expertly done here. I've never seen a movie like this before. I think it was film critic, I think it was maybe Maria Gates, if I'm not mistaken, that compared this to, or not compared this, but described this as a political thriller, as if it were a video essay, which is
accurate.
I've never seen a movie described like that before. So it's kind of a one-of-a-kind thing. So I think it is quite great. One of my favorite movies of the year, regardless of its categorization.
Nice.
Yeah. I am fully in lockstep in terms of nominations with Brendan. The Remarkable Life of Evelyn, Sugarcane, Dahomey, Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, and No Other Land. Those are my 5 nominees as well. However, in terms of winners, I'm with Dave, so I'm kind of splitting the difference here a little bit.
God, you're so smart. Have I ever mentioned how smart you are? Well done, JT.
Appreciate it. No,
I take pride never agreeing with Dave.
And I think what's interesting is that in any other year, if No Other Land didn't exist, I think my winner quite easily would be Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. It is a really great movie, and you can still even argue that as a film and how it's mechanics and are working, interweaving all of those elements. It's incredible.
It's
but
definitely more complex. Good Lord.
It is. Yeah. But there is something about the vitality of No Other Land, the bleakness of it. And as you noted earlier, the collusion of Palestinian and Israeli journalists working together to convey the displacement and the cleansing that is happening in the West Bank. And it is incredibly harrowing to watch. There are things unfold on camera. I mean, they actively seek it out. When they see something that is happening, they will literally run toward it. They run toward the danger and talk about how they're filming this not for themselves. They talk explicitly about how they are wanting to expose this to the rest of the world, particularly the Western powers, because they know they're the countries that have the power to do something about this, which I think is absolutely incredible. And then in the midst of all of that, it is also this beautiful movie about friendship between two, these two individuals that come from the two countries that are in conflict here, and they're fighting for the same thing and wanting to maintain hope. And like how that relationship forms throughout the film is deeply poignant as well. So it might not have the filmmaking tricks of something like Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, but I do love what this film is doing in terms of the demonstrating the grim realities that are happening around them and seeking that out, and underlying that with this really humanistic story of two friends and what the world can look like when you come together instead of being conflict, and how that unfolds in the film. It truly is stunning. Really,
it's like guerrilla filmmaking. Like they're just picking up a camera and figuring it out.
And just it's incredible. It's really, really incredible.
Like I said, it feels dangerous. It feels like something you watch. You have to be like fearing for your life that you know too much information that you shouldn't know. Like it's like this revealing of a
film studios clearly don't want you to. So now's the time. And it's crazy to me that like not a single film studio has picked this up, because this is like almost guaranteed going to be nominated for an Oscar. Like this is the easiest. This is like the easiest business decision for any movie studio, except for maybe other things going on behind the scenes. So
and the sad thing is that's what they're waiting on, because that'll be their excuse card when they go to market it, because they don't want to touch the material. They want to just use the Oscar card.
That's right.
So
that's right. It's really unfortunate because it's a beautiful piece of film. So
all right, we're gonna move on to the next category here, and I just want to put this out there: if we're gonna beat the Brutalist,
we're not going to. It's not going to happen.
We're going to have to be a little bit more brief as we go here. I don't know if we're going to do it or not.
We'll see.
I was just thinking that this is not going to happen.
I don't
want to admit defeat just yet, because I don't want to make ourselves talk for way more than we even have to.
For sure.
As he continues to talk. It's like,
all right.
I'm done. I'm done. Good night.
Best cinematography. Dave, what do you got for best cinematography?
All right. So best cinematography, first, I have two from the same cinematographer. I have Trap and Challengers. I almost put Queer in here as well, but I left it to two. And then I have The Brutalist from Lowell Crawley, I believe. And then Nosferatu, surprise, surprise, but this may be one of the first appearances in my nominations for Nosferatu, and Nickel Boys from Joe Mofre. And any other year, if you take out Nickel Boys, this is a hard decision. But Nickel Boys does something that is almost impossible. It uses its cinematography to connect you with the individual characters. There have been movies before that have tried to do first person before, but never this successful. And Joe Mofre, I think, also did All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt, which is another stunningly beautiful poetic film. Despite the fact that we have someone who has two movies on this list, he sadly does not win Nickel Boys best cinematography, and it's kind of not close. Like I just think it's an incredible work of art. So.
There is something very special about what's going on cinematically with that movie, not just in its cinematography. We'll even talk about Ramal Ross later, I'm sure, with regard to his direction and even his adaptation process as a screenwriter. There's so much going on with Nickel Boys that is just it's why we go to the movies. It's why we love to see these things. It's a nominee for me, Jomo Frey for sure, alongside I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Jaron Blaschke for Nosferatu, Lo Crawley for The Brutalist, Greg Fraser for Doom Part 2, and then I'm actually going to nominate Sayumbu Muktiprum for Queer specifically. That's the one I'm going to pick. But I feel like you can really give it to him for any of these three movies. It's
pick one.
All very different, but there's something about the vibe of Queer that I think is quite great. Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. I in a way, I kind of want to give it to Queer, but there's so much about that movie that's working in conjunction with its great art direction and some of the coloring of that movie. But the fact that Jomo Frey's work in Nickel Boys literally is like a part of the adaptation process for that movie. It very much is a character, a very generic thing to say about why it works so well. But when we talk about movies putting you in the shoes of someone else, this is what we mean. And this is what we mean when it does it successfully. So yeah, Jomo Frey is my winner here.
Okay. As far as my 5 nominees, you guys have touched on them all, I believe. I also have Jaron Blaschke for Nosferatu, Sayambu Muktiprum. Again, forgive me. I'm probably butchering that, but I at least wanted to try. But I'm also going with Queer specifically for him and my nominee there. I also have Jomo Frey for Nickel Boys, The Brutalist, Lo Crawley, and then my last one here is Greg Fraser for Dune Part 2. We've done it again, boys. We've done it.
I mean,
again.
that one, it's just like if this doesn't win the Oscar for best cinematography, something is wrong.
Yeah,
because like it's not just
incredible.
that it's great; it's doing something really radical, like that shouldn't work. Like that. If I was on your top 5 scenes, maybe that hug sequence from Nickel Boys might have been on there. Like you feel like you're being hugged by this grandmother. Like that's what it feels like. And to have a movie do that, like make you feel held, that is amazing artwork. Like
there's a tangibility to it. It actually captures an intimacy, which is really difficult.
Yeah. Yep. I also think of, and I did not know this until we did the review and we had Sophia Simonello on, and she was talking about how there's a moment between Hattie, Elwood's grandmother, played by Anjanae Ellis Taylor,
who's always amazing, by the way, in everything.
She's incredible. And Elwood, they're sitting at a table, and there's a moment where, because the camera is acting as Elwood in the moment, and we're looking at Hattie, where the camera looks down, and it wasn't an intentional choice. It was a moment of forgetfulness from the camera person there as to what was happening, but she stays in the moment and demands that you look at me in the eyes when I'm talking to you, is more or less what she says. She says it more tenderly than what I just did. But and the camera looks back up, and so like it's just this incredible accident that happens on the day that they end up using in the film and works perfectly for the moment. It's
beautiful.
Like it's stuff like that that is just, it is phenomenal. So I agree.
That's
with
the
you.
thing. Yeah. To say that Jomo Frey's work here is a character in the movie is almost putting it lightly. He's giving an acting performance in many ways. Like the camera is an acting performance here.
Yeah,
it really is phenomenal. It's more than just a gimmick, and even just beyond like the technical craft of it and how it immerses you into the characters' perspectives. There are just moments here, I like frames that I just think are so gorgeous, and how they render this world, this world that is otherwise bleak, right? Given what and arduous, given what these characters are experiencing.
Yeah.
And yet the world that we're immersed into is just absolutely gorgeous. So,
and it also creates that switch that happens about halfway through the movie, and it's like
the lunch table.
Disorienting. The lunch table, and you're just like, oh, we're in a different movie now. Like I'm in a different person. I'm experiencing a different world. Whoa, it is like quite a moment.
Stunning.
So yeah, I mean, he really is. It's almost like Jomo Frey should be getting nominations for Best Supporting Actor, because
it really should be. Yeah,
almost
really great.
Yeah,
honestly,
absolutely incredible. All right, so that is Best Cinematography. All right, let's get to the screenplay categories. Let's start with Best Adapted Screenplay. Dave, what do you got?
All right. I think both these categories are an embarrassment of riches this year, actually. So Best Adapted Screenplay, first I have Sing Sing, which is a movie that has been failed by its release schedule. I want so many more people to see this movie than have had the opportunity, because if you want to talk about a movie with heart, this is it. And here's a movie that I bet will not be on anyone else's list. Maybe anywhere, is The Bike Riders.
Love that.
That's a good pick.
Stuff.
That's a good pick.
Because you want to talk about like making a leap. Because like The Bike Riders, the book it's based on, it's like a picture book. I mean, it's just a photo book. And he made it into, in my mind, an amazing script and an amazing movie.
I agree.
Nickel Boys, you already mentioned, again, a drastic change from the perspective of the book. Nosferatu, also, I think Eggers is not getting quite enough credit for what he's done here with a screenplay. He has threaded a very particular needle. He has made a Dracula movie, a Nosferatu movie, and his own movie somewhere right in the middle. And that is not easy to do, to kind of satisfy all of that. I was really, really impressed. And, you know, I've talked about it other places, but Dracula is one of my favorite books ever written. I'm rereading it right now. I probably read that book like 15 times. I'm like obsessed with it. So like I'm looking to pick it apart, and I was just like in love. And then Hitman from Richard Linklater, I thought was a tremendous adapted screenplay. Another one of those screenplays, much like Hustlers, something that you're not sure is really going to work when you adapt it. But man, I really wish Hitman got like a theatrical release, because I watched it at home and I had a blast. But I would love to have seen that movie in a big crowded theater, because it's like funny, it's sexy, there's adventure, there's mystery, there's everything going on, and it's all packed in that screenplay. But my winner, surprise, surprise, is Nosferatu. Wearing the shirt, repping the movie. I think it's great. I think Eggers is one of our best working directors and writers.
He's one of my boys. Yeah.
He's fabulous and fantastic. So Nosferatu, best adapted screenplay.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you're saying as far as why that movie does ultimately work. A lot of that, though, for me is really due to the direction and how he's able to tonally balance all those things.
Sure.
I have to take every opportunity to disagree with you on things. The script for Nosferatu is my biggest issue with it, and it's primarily because the scenes with Willem Dafoe, Ralph Ineson, and Aaron Taylor Johnson really just feel like plot to me. I feel like there's a lot of plotty expositional stuff happening in between the great stuff, and that's why I didn't fully love the movie. But I do love what Eggers is doing as far as combining all of these elements. I think as a visual splendor, it's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. As far as my nominees here, we have some crossover, Dave. I do also have Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes for Nickel Boys. I have Richard Linklater and Glenn Powell for Hitman. As far as a few others, I have Justin Kuritzkes for Queer. I have George Miller and Nick Lotharius for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. And my last nominee, Vera Drew and Brie LaRose for The People's Joker.
I love that pick.
Really inventive stuff there for sure.
Yeah.
And I was on. I feel like I can pick any one of these five out of a hat, and I would be happy with those as a victor here. I think if I'm going to pick one right now off the cuff, you know, JD, just coming off the heels of our discussion of our best scenes of the year on episode 618, we talked a lot about the ending to Furiosa. So I think right now, I'm going to give the edge to George Miller and Nick Lotharius for that film.
Nice.
So yeah, they're going to get my win here, because I think there's a lot about what's going on narratively, what's going on in the backbone of that movie that is so weirdly psychological and weirdly biblical, very symbolic. It's a very different vibe when compared to Mad Max Fury Road. I often say that if this is a heavy metal franchise, and I'm going to make a reference to a band like Metallica, Fury Road was Enter Sandman. Furiosa is Nothing Else Matters. It's the epic power ballad of this kind of, you know, genre filmmaking. And of course, a lot of that is due to George Miller's direction. But I think the script writing here, and maybe why I'm giving it the win, which might not be fair, I just think it's such an underappreciated portion of the movie. There's so much going on story-wise, and all of the symbolic imagery, the biblical imagery that comes at the end, I think is all baked into the actual story itself that I think is so crucial to why this film is so interesting. And I really wish more people were talking about it.
Okay, that is a really interesting pick. I am glad to hear it. As far as my nominees for adapted screenplay, I have Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes for Nickel Boys, Greg Quidar and Clinton Bentley for Sing Sing, Chris Sanders for The Wild Robot, Justin Koretsky's, forgive me for butchering that, for the film Queer, and then my last nominee here is George Miller and Nico Lotharius for Furiosa, and God damn it, Brenton, for stealing my thunder.
What did you do?
When it comes to Furiosa.
I was wondering why you were so.
Pick.
I was wondering why you were so quiet after I gave my reasonings for it.
Yes, that's why you stole my thunder wholeheartedly. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I absolutely love the screenplay to Furiosa, and for me, I think it is the star of that movie. I've talked quite incessantly, at least when we're discussing this movie, in comparison to Mad Max, how it is the inverse of that film, right?
Yeah.
Mad Max Fury Road was structured around its spectacle, but infused with these moments of poetry, whereas Furiosa is structured around its parable and infuses moments of spectacle throughout. I absolutely love its parabolic structure. It becomes mythical, biblical, as you were talking about, in its scope. And I love the grandeur of the writing in that regard, as it gets into ideas of revenge and grief and hope, how all of those things are fused with these characters. And while I think the larger storytelling is really great, what is probably most underrated, especially because at times you get lost in the spectacle, and I do think there is a diverting quality to all of that for sure, but the character exchanges in this film are really, really great. Really, really fantastic. And I think that's, partially why I think the performances here are so great, because they are given dialogue as if it's Moses on the mountaintop speaking about the 10 Commandments. Like it is phenomenal how large the writing is in that regard. And then the performances do such a great job of tapping into that kind of mythical quality that comes in the writing. And that final scene between Furiosa and Dementis, it is nothing short of poetry. It is absolutely incredible how all of that crystallizes there. And then getting into the mythical ambiguity of it all as to what really happened to Dementis. Like that kind of writing takes these movies to a whole new level. And that is the difference between a George Miller and a lot of the other slop that we get from, the Hollywood studios in terms of large scale filmmaking.
So sad this movie was not a hit.
It blows my mind. But I think the writing is nothing short of brilliant. I think it is absolutely one of the best screenplays of the year. And for that, it is my winner here for adapted screenplay.
So good. Good brain, JD.
Okay.
Good brain.
Yep, good stuff. All right, let's get to best original screenplay. Dave, what do you got?
Okay, so The Brutalist is my first nominee. I think Brady Corbet, and I'm trying to remember his wife's name who wrote this with him. Mona something, I can't remember, but it is
Fastfold,
Mona Fastfold. Yeah, it is big, it is unwieldy, it is challenging, and it is chock full of just about everything you can imagine. And a lot of that has to do with the script. And according to Brady Corbet, once he locked the script, there were basically no rewrites. No one was doing any ad libs. This is all on the page. Kind of an incredible work that they have put out.
Okay.
The second one,
actually. Yeah.
The second one is a movie I've mentioned a couple times, Ghostlight. I think this is tremendously well written and, of course, underseen, as I mentioned. My Old Ass, again, really well written, really refined. there's no wasted moment in this movie. It's not a long movie. I think it's like an hour and 45, and it hits so many emotional beats. It is pretty impressive. A Real Pain, which is getting a lot of Oscar buzz, mainly for Kieran Culkin. I was most impressed with how well this was written, and the fact that I didn't hate Jesse Eisenberg for once. So that was a nice surprise. And I don't mean that Jesse Eisenberg is a bad actor. I don't think he is. I think he's actually very good. But I think we all have those actors or actresses, for whatever reason, they just get on our nerves. And Jesse Eisenberg is that guy for me. Even though I think
Cameron Diaz for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's great in The Social Network. I think he's perfect. I think he's really good here too.
Taps into those traits of his very well. That character does. But you're right. He is kind of irritating in a way.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But the writing here is really great. There's, I think both of those characters have a lot of wonderful moments. I think, we mentioned category fraud in passing. I think Kieran Culkin is maybe one of the biggest cases of category fraud I've seen in many, many years. He is absolutely a lead character. It's a co-lead situation, but it's very well balanced in that way. And I think a lot of that has to do with the script. And then my wild card pick for Best Original Screenplay is The Order.
Interesting.
I really, really like this. I think it has its moments of monologuing, but it never feels too much. It feels just right. And I think, a lot of what I think of the screenplay, of course, has to do with the performances that the screenplay affords. Jude Law has always been good. But this is a much more, it's not a big character. But the script gives him an opportunity to shine when it is time for that. And we already mentioned Nicholas Hoult and his fabulous year this year. So I'm tabbing The Order with Best Original Screenplay nomination. The winner is The Brutalist. I just think I kind of want to own a copy of this screenplay. Like it's just got levels on levels on levels. There's certainly a very clear metaphor for the artistic process and things that Brady Corbet went through in one of my favorite movies, Vox Lux. I've been a Vox Lux defender from the beginning. I love it. 5 stars. Incredible. I adore it. It was my favorite movie of that year. So the fact that Brady Corbet is getting his moment in the sun is the world telling me I'm right is really what this is about. It's like, Dave, yes.
I don't think that's how
you are correct. That is how it works.
Oh
for me.
My gosh.
So Best Original Screenplay, Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold.
Well, all right. Dave is going to use this as a bigger opportunity to say that he's right and everyone else is wrong, especially me when I say The Brutalist is not among my 5 for Best Original Screenplay.
That's all right. Not everyone understands art the way I do. It's fine.
It's understandable.
I like this movie quite a bit.
It's a movie that I don't blame people that don't like. Like, I get it.
I like it quite a bit. I just it hasn't stuck with me as much as some of these others, and admittedly, it's because it's such a big movie. There's so much of it. Yeah, I gave it a first watch around the time I was trying to cram in so many heavy hitters and movies like Nickel Boys and All We Imagine Is Lead. I think I watched all 3 of them back to back, and those 2 movies just happened to stick with me more. So it really could be a timing thing, that my mind and my emotional headspace was just not tied to something like The Brutalist at that point. So it's definitely one I have to, give another go. To be continued, I guess. But as far as my other 5 nominees here, I also have Jesse Eisenberg for A Real Pain. Really great stuff there. Nice. My other nominees here, I have Victor Arise and Miko Gastambide. I don't know if I'm pronouncing these names right, but they're the writers for Close Your Eyes, the Spanish film. I also have Aaron Schimberg for A Different Man. I have Jane Schoenbrunn for I Saw the TV Glow, and Jeremy Saulnier for Rebel Ridge. Those are my 5 nominees there. My winner is actually Aaron Schimberg for A Different Man. Nice. I think this might be one of, if not the smartest films of the year, because of how many layers upon layers there are to peel apart as it goes scene by scene. It's knowingly doing that, which is really fascinating. I love the use of irony with Edward, played by Sebastian Stan, being born to play this particular role, but in his choice to surgically remove his deformity, it then makes him the wrong choice. I think is a really fascinating notion. So just as a story about self-love and self-respect, I think it is really good. But then further as a commentary about what it means to portray disability in film and television, I think it's even better. And a lot of that is all based on what Aaron Schimberg is doing on the page. I think is really quite clever.
Yeah,
Nice.
This is a really, really smart film. I agree with you. A lot of nuances to it. I love the writing as well. So Schimberg is definitely a nominee for me as well. I have A Different Man here. My other 4 nominees are Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine As Light. I also have Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold for The Brutalist. Jesse Eisenberg for Real Pain.
Look,
I guess
that
that's
is how it feels.
Dave would call him.
Sounds like an actual name, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I'm going to see the new
accepted me
Jesse
there.
Payne movie.
Yeah, I'm going to see that Jesse Payne movie. Jesse Eisenberg for A Real Pain. And then my last nominee here is Radu Jude for Do Not Expect Much from the End of the World.
Okay.
This is a category that evokes the question of when should you stop doing homework? Because I had a different winner as of 2 days ago. But no, I had to keep watching movies in preparation for the InSession Film Awards.
And who told you to keep watching movies? Who told you?
I don't know. I don't know. Again, that's why I raised the question. When should we stop? A month
I
ahead
told
of
JD
time,
to
a
stop.
week, a
I
few
told him to
days?
stop. I told him to stop hurting yourself.
Keep going. Keep going.
I mean, good Lord. Because I had a different winner as of 2 days ago. And then I watch Do Not Expect Much from the End of the World. And it completely reshifted so much of the InSession Film Awards for me. And that very much includes Best Original Screenplay, because Radu Jude's screenplay is my winner for Best Original Screenplay. And as of 2 days ago, if we recorded this 2 days ago, I would have agreed there with Brendan. Aaron Schimberg's screenplay is absolutely incredible. I love it, and is my number 2 here. But what Jude does with this film, it is a stunner to me. It is thematically the most dense, complex film of the year. The way it intertwines social and political dramas of the past, specifically the 1980s, to today, as the film shifts from 1980s Romanian drama about this female taxi driver to the modern day where Angela, the character that we follow, she drives around Bucharest for this video project. The parallels between those two timelines is really, really striking. And that on its own terms is impressive. But that's really just scratching the surface, because Jude's screenplay also wrestles with corporate greed and manipulation and the tendency of capitalism to blame injuries of workers on themselves. It's going after the Romanian government, selling itself to Europe. There's ideas of racism and prejudice here, toxic masculinity, and how the film uses TikTok as a literal filter for that in the film is absolutely hysterical. There's a Huey Boll cameo that had me on the floor. It's about filmmaking itself. Hell, it's even about the bad roads and drivers that are in Romania. There's no way all of this should work in the same movie, and yet I would argue it very much does, because ultimately this is a movie about how it's a miracle that we're able to live our lives in this world the way that it is. The fact that we can make it through a day is remarkable. It is a miracle. That is ultimately the film's ethos and its premise. That's what it wants to convey more than anything else. The way power is structured, we should not be able to survive. We shouldn't. And yet we somehow are able to make it through. And look, when you get to the end of the film, it is a little bleak in terms of like where the film kind of leaves you in some of that. But in arriving to that ending, as heavy as the commentary kind of is, it really is the funniest film of the year for me. I think the dialogue is cracking. There is a warehouse joke. Obviously, I don't want to give it away, but there is a warehouse joke that is told when they're on this Zoom call that I had to pause the movie. I almost fell out of my chair. It was so good.
Interesting. Okay.
I absolutely loved it. So like, to me, it's the funniest film of the year. It has one of the best central performances of the year as well. And it all kind of starts with this screenplay. It's navigating so much. It is a really dense movie, and it's, I don't know, nearly 3 hours. It's kind of a long movie as well. but the way it navigates all of these things into one seamless thesis, I think is brilliant. I think it is nothing short of brilliant. I adored the movie. Absolutely love it. Cannot recommend it enough. Do not expect much from The End of the World. My winner for Best Original Screenplay.
Guess I need to finish it.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. All right, let's move on to Best Director. Dave, what do you got?
Okay, so all of these movies have been mentioned by one or two or three of us before.
What are the chances that we all cross over here?
I think pretty high.
50-50? Higher than that?
I can almost guarantee we're
70-30?
not gonna. I think there's gonna be at least one on my list that is not on yours.
As far as winners, though,
winners probably.
I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
go ahead.
The Brutalist, Brady Corbet. Nosferatu, Robert Eggers. Nickel Boys, Ramel Ross. Challengers, Luca Guadagnino.
Okay.
All We Imagine Is Light, Pio Capadia. The winner, I mean, it's like I almost feel bad because Brady Corbet, Robert Eggers, phenomenal work. But Ramel Ross, you can't talk about Best Director this year without Ramel Ross. If Ramel Ross doesn't get nominated at the Oscars, something once again is wrong, because this is not only probably going to be the best thing he ever does, this might be the best thing anyone on this list ever does. This direction job is perfect. Like, no bad choices, no fat on this movie. Every decision is correct. And it is, I mean, the pairing of Ramel Ross and Jomo Frey is like one for the ages. I hope that it becomes one of those things where they just work together for the rest of their career.
I was going to say they're not allowed to break apart.
Seriously. Incredible. Yeah. Ramel Ross, Best Director, not particularly close. Ramel Ross.
Yep. Ramel Ross is a nominee for me, as well as Pio Capadia. I have a few other ones here as far as my other nominees. They include Sean Baker for Anora, George Miller for Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, and Pascal Plante for Red Rooms. Those are my 5 nominees. Ramel Ross is my winner, though. As I mentioned earlier, when we talk about filmmakers trying to reinvent the form, this is what we meet. And it never feels like a gimmick. I mean, it is a gimmick, but it never feels like a gimmick. That's the big difference there. And I never found it emotionally suffocating either. I found it very complimentary for all the reasons we've been talking about. I think it's really great work, masterful work. I'm sure we'll talk about it further as this entire awards episode continues.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's a movie in many ways about Black pain that chooses not to show the grotesque side of it.
Sure.
It allows you to understand this is the terrible thing that happened, and it makes you feel like there is a scene where they're leading one of the characters into this room to be punished, and my heart felt like it was going to pop out of my chest. I was so anxious. And yet they never show anything. Like, they show some of the after effects,
one of the
but
best
it's not
edits of the year.
That whole incredible.
Sequence.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It just shows you can have Black pain on screen without diving into it and using it as shock value. And I thought that was wonderful to see.
Yeah. The utilization of archival footage during some of that too is like just it adds a historical relevance to it, which actually makes it more painful knowing how real that this ultimately was.
Absolutely.
Yep. Okay, with all of that said, Ramel Ross is a nominee for me as well, for all the reasons you guys noted there. I also have Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, Pio Capadia for All We Imagine as Light, Jane Schoenbrunn for I Saw the TV Glow,
like that pick.
And my final one here is Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2.
Okay.
I think this was a really great category. I actually have another 5 here that if I listed out these other 5, you guys would be like, oh yeah, that's also a great.
All good choices. Good year. Good year.
So I don't know what else to say. It is Ramel Ross. This category begins and ends with Ramel Ross and Nickel Boys.
Yep.
It is the best direction of the year. I have really nothing to add. I think you guys all nailed it. It is a stunning work of art. And I completely agree.
Great stuff.
Beautiful movie. Okay. With that said, let's move on to the acting categories. We have 4 more to go. If we do this brief enough, maybe we'll get under that 3.5 hours. We shall see.
We have 23 minutes, 22 minutes actually.
So, best actress in a supporting role. Dave, what do you got?
All right. So I have Katie O'Brien from Love Lies Bleeding. I think not only a shocking surprise performance, but obviously I think one of the best of the year. She goes toe to toe with one of our best actresses in Kristen Stewart. And I believe every moment that is happening, even the body horror moments, which are shocking and amazing. God bless Rose Glass. Next is Felicity Jones from The Brutalist. There is, I don't want to ruin it because a lot of people haven't seen it, but there is a scene that reads as an Oscar moment and is also one of the best moments in the entire movie. And it really, really, really works. I've never been a big Felicity Jones fan. She really impressed me here. I thought she was really great.
Okay. I agree. She's really good here.
Joan Chen in Dee Dee. Another great coming of age story, just like My Old Ass, which will come up in a bit. Obviously plays the mother of our lead character, and talk about an unsung actress throughout her career who has always been good, always been solid. And I love the fact that she really got a chance to shine here. And then Michelle Austin from Hard Truths. There's another performance in that movie, obviously, that is getting a lot of deserved publicity. But I think in many ways, Michelle Austin kind of holds that movie together. She gets the less showy part in Hard Truths, and she kind of holds the space for everything that's going on, and just a really impactful performance.
Did you just say that she's holding space for that movie?
I know. I thought I
had to do it. I had to do it.
Well done.
And the last one I mentioned My Old Ass about 100 times. Aubrey Plaza in this movie has no right to be as good as she is. Like, there are a lot of funny moments with Aubrey Plaza, and she plays those wonderfully. There's a moment at the end of this film that I did not know Aubrey Plaza had in her. There is a reconciliation moment, let's say, for the people who haven't seen it. And I was tearing up, and I was not expecting that in this movie. I was loving the movie all the way, blah, blah, blah. It was great, having a good time. And then that moment hit, and it kind of put it on another level for me. And it shows the power of small moments in cinema. Everything from both of these lead characters builds to this moment. And if Aubrey Plaza doesn't play it just right, the movie kind of falls apart. Like, it doesn't work if she doesn't play this right. And she plays it perfectly. So it's like, sometimes it's not about a bunch of sequences that you remember. Sometimes it's just about a moment, and that's enough. So that's enough to get her the nomination. But my winner is Michelle Austin. Michelle Austin from Hard Truths.
That's a good pick. That's a very good pick. Yeah. No one's really going to think about that one aside from you. But it really is a very good pick because she has to be she has to be the as you said, she's kind of the nucleus of the movie. Without her, the movie kind of falls into this territory of just loud, abrasive noise.
Yeah. It's the only reason we care about the lead character is how she interacts with her.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great stuff there. She almost made my 5 for the exact same reasons, but it just goes to show how competitive this category really is in many ways.
Wait, is this not objective truth? I thought everything I said was objective truth. Is that not?
No comment.
Is that not how movies make?
No
work?
comment. No comment.
If only.
Interesting. Yeah. A better world, but continue.
My 5 nominees are Adria Arjona for Hitman, Joan Chen for Dee Dee, Anjanou Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys. Just such a warm hug of a performance, literally.
Just right outside my top 5. It hurt.
Yeah, she's not in the movie a lot, but every time she's there, she really makes an impact.
It's impactful. Yeah.
I also have Natasha Lyonne for His 3 Daughters.
Good pick.
And Usha Simkum for How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe because that movie is so top of mind, Usha Simkum's getting my award for this one.
Nice.
Just the performance that moved me the most of these. It's certainly not the most challenging performance of the nominees I've listed here, but it is the one that moved me the most. And knowing that this is Seemkum's acting debut just adds something to this. She was a 78-year-old housewife before taking on this role.
That's crazy.
Such an incredible story, and just knowing her commitment to that and the fact that she delivered such a passionate performance here, I think is really great. So yeah, stuck with me for sure.
Yeah, I will say maybe it's not the most challenging of performances comparatively to others, but I don't want people listening to think that it is simple, because it's not. She is
it seems simple because it's effortless.
It is effortless. I agree. And that's why I wanted to bring some clarity to it, because she has to brilliantly ride this line between showing that she is someone that is capable of doing things herself, and she doesn't have the closest of relationships with her grandson, and she is a little abrasive toward him at times. And also, she's extremely charming and funny. It is one of the funniest performances of the year. She brings some great levity to that film that I think is great. So to ride that line as impeccably as she does for a non-actor is truly something to behold.
Agreed.
It really is great. So for that reason, she's also nominated for me as well. I also have Usha Seemkum here as well. My other 4 nominees, I also have Joan Chen for Dee Dee. I have Natasha Lyonne for His Three Daughters. I have Anjanae Ellis-Taylor for Nickel Boys. Wow. And then my last nominee here, it is a little bit of a cheat, I'm willing to admit, but it's a little bit of that Colin Farrell thing we talked about a few years ago, with 2 great performances in After Yang and The Banshees of Inisherin, and it's kind of impossible to separate between the two, although you could pick one if you want to guess. But in that same spirit, my last nominee here is Aubrey Plaza for My Old Ass and Megalopolis. I think the work that she does this year is truly
so
great.
Different, which is so interesting.
Very different performances.
Yeah.
Very, very different performances. But I think, the work that she's doing in Megalopolis it was one of the more fun performances of the year. I love how committed and wild she is in that film. It is so diverting to watch. And then
it's the best performance in that movie.
Oh, I agree. Hands down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you get to My Old Ass, and as funny as she is in that opening scene when she first comes on the screen, and the phone calls are really great as well, what she brings in that reunion scene at the end blew me away. Just incredible what she does there. It's a small, brief little moment, but the pathos she brings to it, it's phenomenal. Phenomenal work. So, Aubrey Plaza is really great. I had a tough time kind of separating them. So Aubrey Plaza is a nominee for me. I love all those. However, my winner here is Joan Chen and her work for Dee Dee. And I think what's really interesting, Dave, because you noted earlier that she's been this unsung actress in many regards, but now she gets this role where she can shine in. And I think the irony of that is that she's playing a character that is stuck in a thankless role.
Yeah.
That is kind of behind the scenes.
It's so meta. It's so perfect.
It is so meta. Wow. Because, her kids don't appreciate the sacrifices that she makes. She could have been this great artist. She wanted to be, as we see in the film. I mean, that scene when she submits a painting for the art competition and then gets rejected is so heartbreaking. The reaction she gives there is absolutely phenomenal.
And also seeing when someone's interested in her art and she just brightens for that moment, oh, you want to know? And who hasn't felt like that about their secret passions, that someone shows, if you meet a friend and they're like, oh, you do a podcast? That's interesting. You're like, yeah, let me talk your ear off for 4 hours about podcasting. It's we all fall into that.
Yeah. It's really great. I also think of that scene when Chris is yelling at her in front of his skateboarder friends there. It's the reaction shots in this film that she gives is absolutely incredible. And yet as the character, she's also able to demonstrate that her love for her kids never wavers, despite the little recognition that she gets for her sacrifices, especially since her husband is gone, as we find out in the film. So she is an unsung hero in that film. I do love the kind of meta component there regarding how the character is written for her. But man, does she shine. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a great word to
Love
use
it.
for her. It is absolutely incredible. She's so good in that film. So Joan Chen, Dee Dee, my winner for Best Supporting Actress.
Love it.
All right, let's get to Best Actor in a Supporting Role. Dave, what do you got?
Oh God, I got to tell you, the next 3 categories are like brutal. Like it is a murderer's row for me. Like really difficult choices. All right, so Best Supporting Actor, first nominee, Bill Skarsgård in Nosferatu. Maybe the most technically impressive performance of the year. If you want to talk about voice, if you want to talk about acting through makeup, physicality, all of that presence, truly. I mean, everyone has said it already, but if you didn't tell me it was Bill Skarsgård, I wouldn't know it was Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah.
And it's not just because of the makeup, it's that voice, it's that the way he's holding his body, just truly like it feels like, you know, it feels like German expressionism. It feels like it feels like a performance we haven't seen for decades and decades. Next is Guy Pearce from The Brutalist. Guy Pearce, always dependably great, also great here. A very disturbing performance for sure. Good American accent work, a very explosive character, hard to deal with. My third one is something that will probably be on no one's list at all. Mike Feist in Challengers, I thought was really, really incredible.
Okay.
Josh O'Connor and Zendaya are getting a lot more of the publicity for this, even in smaller critics groups. But I really do think Mike Feist is kind of the heart of that movie. He is, I think, the only character that's really possible to root for in that movie. And he is softer than everyone else. He is easier to please than everyone else. And I think that's a really difficult character to play in such an intense film. And I, you know, first seeing Mike Feist in West Side Story, I am so excited also to see Josh O'Connor's career, but Mike Feist especially, I'm just like, whatever you're doing, I'm watching. Fourth is Clarence Macklin from Sing Sing. You go up against Coleman Domingo and you hold your own, you're great. Like that's Coleman Domingo is one of the best actors we have working, and Clarence Macklin really, really shines in Sing Sing. And then my fun pick, Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2, really just a truly perfectly enjoyable performance, but there is reason for the things he's doing. Denzel is making choices in this movie, and at first I thought he was making choices just to be fun. We talked about the flourish, right? The robes and, you know, the swagger and all that stuff. But you find out something about that character later in the movie, which explains why he would constantly be adjusting his clothing and making sure he is presentable in exactly the right way. And in case people haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil what that revelation is. But as I watched it, I was like, oh, this is very entertaining what he's doing. And then after the movie, I was like, oh, you were doing this not just to look fun and look cool and have a good time, but there's a purpose behind this extra performance that you're giving. And also it's just really fun. Like he is having a blast. He knows exactly the type of movie he is in, and he is diving in head first. And, you know, honestly, any movie that Denzel does, you can't go wrong nominating Denzel because he's one of the best.
Yeah.
The winner, it hurts me to not give this to Guy Pearce because like he has worked so long for awards, but luckily my awards don't mean anything. So he's never going to know. So I'm giving this to Bill Skarsgård, a truly transportational and transformational performance, and something that I kind of can't stop thinking about. Like every time I think about that movie, there's a lot of great things in it. Obviously, I love that movie. But I think if you have a subpar Orlok, obviously this movie doesn't work. Like you need him there. You need his presence. You need that height. You need that voice, that everything, which is he's taking big, big swings and big, big risks. And for me, they really work. So Bill Skarsgård, Best Supporting Actor.
He's very effective in the film. He almost made my 5. I think he really is quite great in it. As far as my 5 nominees, I also have Clarence Macklin for Sing Sing. I have Yuri Borisov for Nora, Chris Hemsworth for Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, Adam Pearson for A Different Man.
So close to my list.
He's so good in that. And my 5th nominee, Dave, Mike Feist for Challengers.
Wow. Okay.
I think he is the best thing in that movie as far as a performance. Yeah, I think he really.
You might be okay. You might be all right.
as much as I love being on your good graces, he's not my winner though. My winner is actually Chris Hemsworth for Furiosa and Mad Max Saga, and I'm kind of wondering why we aren't talking about him enough. He disappears as Dementis in this movie. Yeah. I rewatched this recently with my wife. It was her first time seeing it, and she really liked it. The first thing that she actually noticed in it was Elsa Pataki, his wife, who makes an appearance early on. And my wife just loves her. She absolutely loves her. So, of course, she takes notice of her. And then it was around the 2/3 mark of the movie when Furiosa and Jack. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. It was around the 2/3 mark of the movie when Furiosa and Jack go to Gastown, which is now being run by Dementis. My wife looked at me and said, "Wait, is that Chris Hemsworth? Has it been Chris Hemsworth the whole time?"
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And you know, part of that is probably due to the nose. I think the makeup work is definitely part of it, but I think it's truly a disappearing and heartbreaking performance. In many ways, like we talked about, it's the thematic nucleus of the entire film. So I think it's very effective stuff.
Nice. Low-key, I think Elsa Pataki is truly great in that movie. Like in this small part that she has. I'm not as high on Furiosa as you both are, which is why he wasn't in my 5, but he's quite good. Like I have no problem with that nomination at all.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Yep. Good stuff. I love me some Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa. He is also a nominee for me as well. My other 4 nominees, I have Yuri Borisov for Anora, Terrence Macklin in Sing Sing, Adam Pearson for A Different Man, and I'm sorry, I know Dave's going to get mad at me for this, but this is where he has been campaigning, and I don't feel like arguing all that much. So I'm going with Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain as my 5th nominee here. I will say quickly, of those that have been engaging in the category fraud, and this year there's been a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
I think I can make the argument the best for Culkin in supporting, because there are large swaths of that film where it's about Eisenberg's character and he does disappear. So even though
that's Eisenberg's best moment, by the way, in my opinion, when Kieran Culkin disappears.
Like the dinner scene when he walks away. And there's also a few scenes where he just storms off to the hotel. Like we see Eisenberg's character in the hotel by himself. So there is more time on him as the lead, where Culkin being in supporting, that makes more sense than, let's say, the Wicked one, for example.
Yes.
Jonathan Bailey, baby.
Or no, Zoe Saldana in supporting actress.
That's like criminal. Also, that movie stinks. So
like, I think there are worse examples this year. So I feel a little justified having Culkin here and supporting. At any rate, those are my 5 nominees. As much as I adore the other 4 nominees, this was always Chris Hemsworth to me. This is Furiosa. It is Hemsworth in a career best role. I was blown away by his work here. Now, some of it certainly tethers to the screenplay and how great I think it is, as I talked about earlier.
Sure.
But as you were talking about there, Brennan, this, like, he's having the time of his life. It's a little bit of what you were talking about with Denzel, actually, Dave, in the sense that there's a layer of exuberance to it. It is theatrical. I love that he's having a lot of fun. But I think underneath the theatricality and the volatility of the character, there's always this emotion that's bubbling underneath, as we learn early on what he has experienced as a result of the world going to hell, and how that grief is driving those menacing actions in the character. I think Hemsworth does such a great job of tapping into that in his performance. So as crazy as he is in the film, and he is nothing short of that, and it's a lot of fun, he's always making sense. He's always doing something in his performance to remind us that he's not just a lunatic. There is something that is driving those actions. And how that obviously coalesces at the end in relation to Furiosa. I would argue it's nothing short of brilliant. I love Hemsworth here. Easily one of my favorite performances of the year. And he's my winner here for Best Supporting Actor.
He's good.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Okay. I will say, just for career best, check out Rush. Rush is also
really great.
Very
I
good.
love him in Rush as well. Yes. And one of my favorite films of that year.
Yeah, good stuff.
All right, let's go to Best Actress. We got 2 more categories here.
Yeah.
So Best Actress. Dave, what do you got?
Oh man, this one's so tough. Brendan mentioned earlier how this one is stacked, and
it absolutely is.
Definitely is.
I feel like that's like every year. This is the category that's always so stacked.
Yeah, women are better than men. That is what
it's what we're implying. Thank you for putting it so directly.
Better at acting than men. That's it. So my nominees: Lily Rose Depp for Nosferatu, Maisie Stella for My Old Ass, Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths, Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here, and my wildcard pick, Naomi Scott from Smile 2.
That's a good pick.
So hard, man. I mean, it's one of those things where if you ask me on 3 different days, you'd probably get 3 different answers, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But I think man, it's hard. But I think I have to go with Fernanda Torres, and I'm Still Here. Lily Rose Depp gives the most committed performance of the year, the most physical performance of the year, and I love it. I adore it. I adore a lot of the things that she's doing. But Fernanda Torres, as I mentioned in my review, it would be so easy to overplay this. It would be so easy to go over the top and scream and yell and gnash your teeth. But her character can't do that because she still has to take care of her family. She still has to be strong. And so she does that. And yet you can never not see the pain behind her eyes. It is a subtle, beautiful, commanding performance. And I would love if awards continued to shower on her, because this is so worth watching. Like Brendan, you mentioned in that episode you guys did, that even if you don't love the movie, she is so watchable that it almost doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter if nothing around her works. She is that good.
Yeah. Yeah. She really is great. And here are my 20 nominees for Best Actress.
Could be so easy to do. Yeah.
It really was tough.
Yeah.
We do cross over on one, Dave, and that's Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. But you make a great point that really you could swap out any other 5 and you have a really great crop of 5 nominees here. It really just goes to show how competitive that it is. But I do have Marianne Jean-Baptiste as one of my nominees alongside Juliette Garibe for Red Rooms,
great choice.
Mikey Madison for Enora, Nell Tiger Free for The First Omen, and Daisy Ridley for Sometimes I Think About Dying. But man, so many other ones I could pick here. Weirdly, though, my winner was always my winner since I first saw this movie. It's honestly kind of not even close in many ways. I think Juliette Garibe in Red Rooms is the performance of the entire year. I think it's the best performance of the whole year. I think it's so good, it should be in the category of crime horror thrillers of characters like Hannibal Lecter. I really think Kelly Ann is that crucial of a character for this type of movie, this type of genre movie. I think this movie, this performance, this character, superbly evil. It is so evil. The most evil movie of the year. And as far as I'm concerned, like I said, it is. Yeah. I think it's the best performance of the year. I really think it's that hypnotically frightening. I've never been this like shaken by a performance in a long time.
Yeah, it's rough. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, to reiterate how insanely stupid this category is, like, she's probably my number 6, but I very much do agree with you. I think it is one of the very best performances of the year. It's kind of why I shoehorn in best overlooked performance, because I want to be able to highlight characters like that and performances like that, because it absolutely is one of the best performances of the year. I wholeheartedly agree. Again, like I mentioned with the last category, I could have another 5 here than what I'm about to lay out, and you guys wouldn't bat an eye. Wouldn't bat an eye. There were several that was really, really difficult to cut out. As far as my 5, though, this is where I landed. Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truths. Fernando Torres for I'm Still Here. Connie Kuzrudi for All We Imagine as Light. Daisy Ridley for Sometimes I Think About Dying. And my last nominee here, Inka Manalachi. I'm probably butchering that, I'm sorry, for Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World.
Okay.
Again, one of those last minute entries into this. So my apologies to Mikey Madison, who I had to cut out at the last possible second there. I do really love Nora, and I love that performance.
And that was my 6. That was my number 6. It was so hard. I don't even love Anora, but I do love her in that movie.
I love her too. Like it really hurt to cut Greppi and Madison there. I mean, again, as far as I'm concerned, I do consider them like a 5 B and C, but math is math. What are you going to do? I mean, it sucks.
It's the worst.
It is the worst. Something about math and art and sports doesn't go together, but anyway, here we are.
Here we are.
That's a debate.
So those are my 5. My winner here, and I do love how we are all, for as much crossing over as we've done, we have departed on this category, because my winner here, I'm going to Connie Kuzrudi for All We Imagine as Light.
It's a great pick.
I love this performance. I've been championing this performance. It is one of those overlooked performances of the year as well. And it kind of circles back to what we were saying earlier. I understand why the film and maybe these performances don't work for everybody, but this is a film that is rooted in stoicism. It is very internalized. It's very reflective, and we learn so much about her loneliness and grief, and without her hardly saying anything. I mean, if you counted up all the words she says in the film, it's probably 24. She says so much more by simply reacting in the moment to other characters, and the relationship she has with the camera. It is the look in her eyes and how that displays this deep-seated grief. Dave, earlier you mentioned the rice cooker scene.
Jeez.
You could write a novel based off of that 10-second interaction. Yeah. It is unbelievable what she's able to denote in that moment. Or as I've talked about a lot, especially going back to last week, the ending of this film and what she is conveying in those moments as well. It's a stunning performance that I think is deeply overlooked. And I don't know, there's something about the nonverbal communication in this film and how deeply poignant it is that I love. I mean, I think I noted when we reviewed this on the show, this is the character I fell in love with the most the whole year. I wanted to hug her at every moment in this film. I just wanted to wrap my arms around her, let her know it's going to be okay. We're going to get on the other side of this. Like, I just wanted to be there tangibly with the character. And that speaks to the prowess of the performance and how much I connected with her. Phenomenal. One of my very favorite performances of the year.
Nice.
Probably would have been my number 6, almost made by 5.
All right. Last on the list, our final category of the night. We are not going to beat The Brutalist, but we did our best. Best Actor. Dave, what do you got?
All right. So for Best Actor, I have Adrian Brody from The Brutalist. A huge movie and a huge performance in terms of time, but it is strangely understated. And the moments that are not understated end up being explained in the coda of the film. Obviously, I won't give any of that away because so many people have been able to see it, but truly, truly wonderful. Justice Smith from I Saw the TV Glow. Especially the screaming sequence, I guess we'll call it, is one of the best scenes of the year.
True horror right there.
Honestly. Yes, absolutely. For sure. Keith Kupferer from Ghostlight, who I've mentioned a few times. Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing. Coleman Domingo, unsurprisingly, delivers yet another fantastic, beautiful, romantic, empathetic performance. No one does it like Coleman Domingo. Just the sequence where he is reaching out of the window, just that is enough to really get into the heart and the soul of that character. He is truly, truly a gifted actor. And then my last nominee is Josh Hartnett from Trap. I think he is genuinely
nominee. That's a great nominee.
Genuinely great in this movie. Again, you can have your complaints about the plot dynamics of the concert and all the I don't care. Shut up. I don't care. Josh Hartnett plays both a loving father and a demented killer perfectly in this movie.
I agree.
You believe him in every moment you're supposed to believe him. He is tremendous. And also, I found out he is the one who gave us the gift of Josh Hartnett with his shirt off in this movie. He is the one who went to M. Night and said, like, I'm just gonna take it off. That was not M. Night's idea. That was Josh Hartnett's idea. And if I look like Josh Hartnett, I would demand no shirt for the entire movie. So the fact that he limited himself in that way, I think, is honorable for the rest of us. But no, I think Josh Hartnett, just a great, great, great performance. And I wanted to highlight him. I wanted to highlight Naomi Scott because I think sometimes horror gets short shrift. And I think it takes a lot of talent to create a memorable, great performance within horror because there are a lot of distractions in a horror movie. And Josh Hartnett manages this, as does Naomi Scott. So just wanted to give him his shine for a minute. He's really, really good. My winner is Keith Kupferer. This is one of from Ghostlight. This is one of the best performances of the last few years. There is a emotional arc to this character that is so real. I felt like I was watching a documentary. It's
so good.
There is, because a lot of this is about dealing with grief, dealing with loss, and he plays a character who's essentially a manual laborer, not a guy in touch with his emotions at all. And seeing him go from the beginning, this like ball of sadness and rage, to a man who opens his heart and soul to the world because of expressing himself through art. Yeah. Like all of us who love art, all of us who love theater, who love film, should watch this performance and be moved. And I certainly was. And talk about an unknown quantity. Had never heard the name before I watched this movie. Had never heard of him and never seen him in anything. And it is a movie that I have watched 3 times now this year. I keep going back to it, and it does not get less impactful. So Keith Kupferer, best actor.
And knowing that it's a real family in real life too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the meta component to it, I think, certainly adds something to it. That courtroom hearing scene, I guess it's like the courtroom meeting scene, whatever you want to call that as. It's hard to really one of the best scenes of the year. Keith Kupferer is also a nominee for me for all of those reasons. I also have Daniel Craig for Queer. I have Nicholas Hoult for really everything. But if I had to pick Juror number two, I think it's the best of the 3 performances of his that we've seen from him this year. I also have Sebastian Stan for A Different Man, maybe a career best performance for him as well. In fact, it might even be. My final nominee is also my winner. I'm giving it to Aaron Pierre for Rebel Ridge.
I love that pick.
Nice.
Yeah, and maybe again, like I talked about with Usha Simkim earlier, maybe not the most quote unquote challenging performance of this batch, emotionally speaking, but there's something about the character of Terry Richmond that just stuck with me that I could not stop thinking about. We often talk about how successful actors are really successful because of what they're able to do with their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Pierre's eyes don't just talk to us. They scream. They scream at us. And this is a performance that just made me nervous, making me believe what Terry was not just capable of, but what he was willing to fight for. I think why I'm giving him such an edge as far as a win here is that this really does feel like the making of a true movie star performance. Like this really feels like the starting point of something big that should happen for this man's career. And if it doesn't happen, talk about your all-time backfires. If it doesn't lead to a massive career after this, I think he's so good in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Can I just say, no big deal. My review the title of it, Rebel Ridge finds a stoic star in Aaron Pierre. So I totally agree with you. But I do disagree with you that this is not as difficult as those other performances.
That's true. That's a fair point.
I think in many ways it's more difficult to create a character like that we care about, that not only has those abilities, but has self-imposed limitations and still make us care about everything that's going on.
That's a good point.
It's a great performance. I agree.
It is.
Yeah.
No, I love it as well. Fantastic. And probably my number 6 or number 7 here. I mean, this is another deep category, and I love that performance as well. As far as my 5 nominees, so I also have Keith Kupfer here for Ghostlight. And while I do agree with you guys about that courtroom scene, it is a great moment of catharsis there for the character. I think my favorite moment of the film, one of the very best reverse shots of the year, is when he's on the stage and or I guess they're in rehearsals. This is like, kind of leading up to the courtroom moment, I believe. And he's having a conversation with his daughter where she says, "You get to be him for a couple of hours." Oh. And the camera cut. I mean, it's a great line. Yeah. But the cut to him and the look on his face reacting to that moment, stunning.
Yeah, it's really good.
Absolutely
really good.
breathtaking.
Yeah.
Love
and the
that
scene
moment.
in the garden earlier, like there's so many moments
so
with him. Just beautiful.
As far as my other nominees here, I have Sebastian Stan for A Different Man, Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, and finally, Daniel Craig for Queer. Those are my 5 nominees. My winner here honestly never wavered, as much as I love all of these other nominees, and they're really, really great. What Sebastian Stan does in A Different Man, though, is truly
kind of thought you were going this
phenomenal.
way. Yeah, it's really great.
Absolutely incredible. He gives a career best performance in this film. All due respect to his work in the other film that shall not be mentioned, that I am in agreement with Dave. I don't think it's very good. He's certainly great in it, but I think what he does in A Different Man is on another level. And I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I love when a performance is understated. Have I talked about that before? Like an internalized, reflective kind of performance. Maybe I've mentioned that a few times.
There's a lot there. Yeah.
But there is something about the sorrow and the humiliation in his eyes in that film that is so palpable. I love the incessant discomfort that he embodies. It is quietly devastating. And how that taps into the film's themes on self-hatred and his identity, how that kind of forms as a result of all of that. It's stunning. It's really, really great work. It's phenomenally nuanced. And as much as I love the writing, and the writing is certainly one of the key factors of why I love that film, but Sebastian Stan certainly elevates it to a new level with his performance. And I think he gives the best actor performance of the year.
It's really great stuff. Really challenging stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely. Very challenging.
I just love what he's doing with his career. Like one of the few kind of people who made it big with the MCU, who's doing really gutsy stuff. Like it kind of reminds me of like the Daniel Radcliffe thing. Like he got his money. And he's just like, I'm going to do weird stuff. I'm going to do whatever calls to me. And I'm
going to do a movie where they strap guns to my hands for the entire run.
Or I'm going to be a farting corpse. Like,
so
why not? Yeah. Like, absolutely. And I see to a lesser degree, of course, like a less extreme degree, but Sebastian Stan is doing even movies that I don't like that he's in. He's doing really good work, and I'm excited to see where he goes next.
Challenging. Yeah. He's not doing the Red Notices of the world or the Red Ones of the world, or God forbid what other movie with red in the title.
Yeah, exactly. And what's going to be weird is that I don't think he's done playing the Winter Soldier either. So like we're going to see him back.
You can
in
do
the
both.
MCU.
You can
do both.
He'll be in Thunderbolts.
It's going to be a little weird, admittedly, to see the Winter Soldier come back on the screen after watching this and be like,
I mean,
I love him, but I don't know if I want him in this movie now.
He'll have the long hair and the eyeliner and the arm. It's like, oh, that's that guy.
But he's always great as that character too. It's not like he ever phones it in. He's always
that's probably my favorite Marvel movie is Captain America and the Winter Soldier. So,
that's up there, but a lot of it, now I think about it, it might be him. It might be like Sebastian Stan is kind of the reason why those Captain America movies, those first two at least, have such an emotional core to them. Like he brings something to them.
He's great. He's
a good one.
Really, really great. Yeah, and what he does with a different man, it just
it's
incredibly
beautiful.
Evocative work.
Him and Pearson together are just gold. So yeah.
Gosh, I love that karaoke scene
Adam
so
Pearson,
much.
yeah. Oh, love that movie. All right, so that is it for part 1 of the InSession Film Awards.
Going to bed.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we would discuss Best Picture, our top 10 movies of 2024. That'll be coming very, very soon. So you can be on the lookout for that. Thanks for listening and sticking with us till the end here. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, especially Dave.
No, don't tell me. I don't want to hear you. No. Talk to JD. Just contact him.
I mean, what did Dave say earlier? It's objective truth is everything he had to say here. So he doesn't want to hear any different opinions.
If you think I'm wrong, you're wrong. So let them happen.
That should be a T-shirt right there. If you think I'm wrong, you're wrong.
That'll be the next one we make. We'll get that up on the store. But yeah, if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, you can leave a comment below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Really appreciate everyone sticking with us here to the end. We hope you enjoyed part 1. Thanks to my lovely gentlemen, Dave, Brennan, as always. We'll be back soon. Don't go anywhere. Stay with us. Stay subscribed. And we'll see you soon for our top 10 movies of 2024. Woo.